Chapter 310. There weren't any more waves on the way back. However, along the way, Zhongsho felt really awkward for the next few days. Being looked at with disdain by the few girls, Zhongsho followed the rules for the next few days. Only then did the surrounding scenery slowly return to normal. However, a few days later, Xinyuan Irin walked out of the pill room and learned about the situation. Right away, she pinched the soft meat on Zhongsho's waist and pulled. In the end, she said sadly, "So little Shou likes the younger ones. No wonder when we were in Cloud Saint City, even if I offered myself, little Shou wasn't willing to take me." Zhongsho was speechless. Even if he jumped into the Dragon River, he wouldn't be able to wash himself clean. The Dragon River was a huge river in the central Cloud Continent. It was a turbid yellow all year round. If one jumped in, they would only be dirtier and wouldn't be able to wash themselves clean. However, towards Shirulin, all of them were very fond of her, especially Chu Shui, who treated Shirulin like a doll, hugging her in her arms and not letting go. However, who knows if this little girl was afraid of strangers or if she was introverted, but she didn't speak much. When she did, her voice made one feel really comfortable. Out of all the girls, only Zhao Yinran had a different expression. However, when the fleet was about to reach the Cloud Ocean Whirlpool ladder, she couldn't help but ask, "I see that you treat this Shirulin a little differently. However, it is different from the feelings between men and women, especially since the first time you met and used the illusionary heart mirror. Your emotions fluctuated the most intensely. I have seen her talents, be it spiritual cultivation or martial path. She is just above average. I really don't know what is so special about this Shirulin to make you pay so much attention to her." Zhongsho smiled and didn't explain. He took out a piece of beast bone from his heaven and earth bag and started to carve it. 15 minutes later, a weird-looking chessboard appeared in front of the two of them. Zhao Yinran's brow furrowed, and then she understood. This is military chess? I've never seen it before. Could it be that it was this set of chess that day in the illusion? What else could it be? Zhongsho shook his head slightly. He then picked up dozens of chess pieces that symbolized various types of troops and placed them on the chessboard. He said indifferently, "Play a few rounds with me." The rules were simple. The chess pieces that represented cavalry, infantry, and archers were marked with their movement speed, damage, and even their health bars. Between each round, there were a few dice. On them, there were not numbers of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but lines of text. How strong was the wind? Was there a rainstorm? It didn't take long for Zhao Yinran to master it, but she was defeated several times in a row. In the end, he said helplessly, "I'm not playing anymore. You're just bullying me." Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. Could it be that Shirulin defeated you in the illusion? What? Her grades are even worse than yours. She's just a little girl. No matter how intelligent she is, how could she possibly defeat me? Zhongsho still shook his head, following which, under Zhao Yinran's confused gaze, he waved at Zhongyuan. When Zhongyuan walked close, Zhongsho smiled and asked, "If it was you and you weren't defeated in a few rounds, what would you do?" Zhongyuan thought about it seriously, following which he took out the sword at his waist and directly smashed the chessboard into pieces. Zhongsho seemed to have expected that. He smiled and asked, "What? If the ruler is just having fun and killing time, Zhongyuan will naturally accompany you. But if you want to test me," as he said that, a cold glow flashed in Zhongyuan's eyes. Then Zhongyuan won't follow other people's rules and won't be limited by them. Zhongsho instantly laughed out loud in satisfaction, as expected from the unparalleled general talent that he had taught. On the side, Zhao Yinran's gaze changed. So this Shirulin was like that in the illusion? Zhongsho nodded slightly. The first round wasn't over and the outcome wasn't decided. This little brat directly flipped the chessboard. If that was the case, it would be okay. It would only mean that this girl was really competitive and wasn't willing to accept defeat. However, after that, my illusion started to collapse, which was why I knew that she wasn't aiming at the outcome of the chess game, but at the rules of the illusion. This little fellow's spiritual cultivation talent is probably even better than mine. In the future, her military path might not be weaker than Zhongyuan's. When he heard that, Zhong Yuan was astonished. He looked at the lion race girl who was quietly lying in the arms of Chu Shui. Zhao Yanran was the same. Her eyes were stunned. Her spiritual cultivation talent was better than Zhong Shou's. Her military path wasn't weaker than Zhong Yuan's. She didn't expect that Zhong Shou's evaluation of this little girl would be so high. Wasn't he expecting this girl to be an unparalleled general in the future? Just as she was about to ask more, Zhong Shou suddenly stood up and looked into the distance. We're here. Tens of miles out, the black mist finally disappeared without a trace. A giant cloud whirlpool appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Following the cloud ocean whirlpool ladder up, it was similarly calm and uneventful. This place was close to Psychic Island, and no one dared to kill or do anything here. 2 hours later, the entire fleet finally arrived at Psychic Island. All the cloud ships in the fleet cheered out, rising and falling, not stopping for a long time. 1,000 warships, 700,000 soldiers went out. However, it was a complete and rewarding journey. Out of all the countless cloud hunts he had gone through, this was the most dangerous, but also the safest. The people on Psychic Island seemed to have gotten the news long ago. When the fleet appeared, the entire island was in an uproar. Numerous people headed towards the pier. The one standing at the front of the crowd was Long Ruo. However, his expression was neither happy nor angry, such that one couldn't see his true thoughts. Behind them were the various sects of the cloud world who stayed on Psychic Island to manage various businesses. Their eyes were all filled with smiles, filled with anticipation. Samaram looked around until he saw 60 to 70 broken cloud ships docked not far away. Only then did he retract his gaze, scoffing coldly in his heart. It seems like after the 3 cities of Taoyuan escaped, they still suffered huge losses. Rushing before them and returning in advance, he wondered what kind of tricks were waiting for him. However, when they got off the ship, Long Ruo surprisingly didn't say anything to scold them. He just expressionlessly congratulated them and gave a few glances to Jing Taozhenren. The group of them left on their own accord. The people from the various sects behind gave Zhong Shou a headache. They all came to purchase Beast Corpse soul stones. The amount wasn't small, and he couldn't offend them. With Zhong Shou's casual personality, he could only accompany them. Only until this night did he deal with half of the matters and send all the people away. He knew that most of these people didn't lack mind stones and beast crystals. On the contrary, the complete beast corpses dug out from the beast tombs were rare resources. This was why no matter what they said, there was no discount. Instead, the price was 50% higher than the market price. Talking to them was giving face to the sects behind them. When the spiritual wave was about to rise, these materials that could greatly increase the strength of the sects would be fought for. Such a large amount might not be available in the next few years. As for whether or not to buy, that was up to them. Until nighttime, on those 1,800 cloud ships, apart from a portion which Zhong Shou kept for his own use, the rest were sold at high prices. The number of beast crystals they obtained far exceeded everyone's expectations. In terms of grade 4 beast crystals, the total number was as high as 30 million. This didn't include the items in the 3 heaven and earth bags of Zhong Shou and Xinyuan Iran. The rewards were given out on the spot. The shares given to the subordinate cities were also given. Gantian Mountain took 55%. In terms of effort, naturally Gantian Mountain City and Zhong Shou did the most. Forcing back the beast wave was mostly due to the 800 energy destroying crossbows. Xian Mountain City also took 25%. The last 20% was split by the various cities. However, all the subordinate city lords were beaming with joy. This ratio had already far exceeded their imagination. With such huge gains, even if they didn't hunt under the cloud ocean for tens of years, it was enough to support them. Zhong Shou shook his head. 30 million grade 4 beast crystals flowed into the market. The few provinces west of Donglin Cloud Continent couldn't be digested in a short time. The outcome would only be inflation. It seemed like these beast crystals would greatly depreciate. It was better for him to store more materials. Even if he wanted to trade, it was best to barter. However, Such huge wealth was no less than what he earned in Jiafu City. Naturally, he didn't dare to bring it with him, directly depositing it into the bank opened by Wujua Villa and Taiyuan's sect. In the end, only Kongqi's sect's Xiaohan didn't leave. 20 days had passed since they last met. The clothing on his body changed once more. His face was red and filled with joy. It was obvious that he was promoted to deacon once more. However, at this moment he acted bitter. If I knew that your highness bought the energy-destroying crossbows to plot against Taoyuan City, no matter what, I wouldn't sell them to your highness. Zhong Shou didn't know what he meant. In terms of business, the 3 million grade 4 beast crystals order had been settled long ago. He also gave a huge discount. Between the two of them, there wasn't much to talk about. However, he didn't show it on his face filled with worry. Why does Deacon Xiaohan say that? I have already explained this matter. It was purely an accident. At that time, I didn't know that there were 4,000 cloud ships outside of the canyon. When I found out, it was already too late. As for what the situation was, your highness, I know. My Kongqi sect has no intentions to pursue the matter. Xiaohan shook his head. He knew how good Zhong Shou was at scamming people and wouldn't fall for it once more. Does your highness know? I have been appointed by the sect to stay in Gantian Mountain. Zhong Shou was startled. Then he heard Xiaohan sigh and explain, your highness caused Gantian Mountain to recover in just a few months. After you return, the west of Donglin Cloud Continent will change. Your highness already has the ability to make my sect do that. Zhong Shou laughed involuntarily and was about to speak, only to see Zhong Yuan walk over. Taoyuan City Envoy Lin Ji requests to meet you. His voice was firm and powerful. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed slightly. This was another familiar person. However, 20 days ago, he was threatened by this person. Time had already passed. Who knows why this person came? Chapter 3:11. At the same time, on a hill, Chai Yuan was so furious that he viciously swung the horsewhip in his hand to the side. Shijie City, Fushuang City, they actually rebelled. This place was right in front of the army formation, a hill at the junction of Xiyun and Huanlong Province. Both sides had a total of 2 million troops, and they were facing off against each other. Gantia Mountain City had fewer troops, but they were more elite. However, at this moment, they were obviously at a disadvantage. Only 500,000 people were stuck in a flat valley. They completely occupied the 2 mountain peaks. 5 to 7 soldiers. In terms of combat strength, they should be on the same level or even slightly better. However, at this moment, Gantia Mountain City needed to split out 200,000 troops to arrange at the back to defend, which was why the Taoyuan City Army had a suppressive advantage. That Yu Guanyun is indeed amazing, directly attacking the weak point, causing these cities to have no choice but to rebel. The one who spoke was Suman, the Xuanwu ancestor who was the deputy commander of the East City Army, when Zhong Shou led his troops back to attack Gantian Mountain. After the battle, along with Suman's strength and intelligence, he was not bad. Before the Cloud Ocean Hunt, Zhong Shou directly appointed him as the deputy general of Chai Yuan. Along with Chai Yuan, he would take charge of Xiyun province to prevent Taoyuan City from attacking. At this moment, his brows were tightly furrowed. Who knows when it started, but there were rumors in the west of Donglin Cloud Continent that tens of city lords were unhappy with Zhong Shou taking the throne and had joined Taoyuan, Blazing Flame, and Yunxia City. During these few days, with Shijie City at the lead, the other cities in the east had already rebelled. The 10-odd city countries in Xiyun province really rebelled, not mentioning the other cities. Only Shijie City and Fushuang City were at the crucial points. Not only did they cut off the supplies of the 500,000 troops here, but they also blocked their path of retreat. It also caused the two of them to place a small portion of their troops behind to defend against a sneak attack from the two cities. However, vast country, Duke, please calm down and bear with it. I think they won't be in a rush to attack now. Oh, Chai Yuan uttered. He looked at him in surprise. Tell me, what do you think? Suman didn't hesitate, opening his mouth to explain. If it was me, I would most probably wait for the results of the Cloud Ocean Hunt to be over before I act. Seeing Chai Yuan smile, Suman knew that this wind bear race leader had thought about it. As expected from one of the famous generals of Gantian Mountain, he wasn't fooled by the dangerous situation on the surface. He still spoke. The reputation that our Gantian Mountain city built for 10 years won't fall so easily. As long as the Overlord Duke, Vast Duke, and Xiao Tingzhu were still around, they would be able to intimidate several provinces. There was also Zhong Yuan, who was up and coming, an unparalleled famous general. It was enough to make it hard for one to have any thoughts of betrayal. Xi'an Province, Shijie City, Shijie City, Zhongshu. Even an idiot would know that if they fought now, even if they could win, they would have to pay a huge price. Why not wait for the ruler to return with no gains under the cloud ocean, the hearts of the people collapsing before attacking? His tone paused. Suman concluded expressionlessly. So our Gantian Mountain seems to be in danger, but is actually safe. As for the ruler's ability, you and I both know about it. There is no need to worry. Talion City isn't good at land battles and is the weakest. On the contrary, Qiu Country Pillar and Overlord Country Duke are more worrying. Chai Yuan nodded his head in satisfaction. Suman only had 7 meridians and was slightly weaker. However, his brain was sharp and could help him. The ruler does have a good eye for people. Although that is the case, it still makes me feel frustrated. This Shijie City, Fushuang City, once your highness returns, I will teach them a lesson. He scoffed furiously, venting the frustration in his heart. Chai Yuan's brows rose up as he looked below the mountain. What do they want to do? Only to see groups of people walking out from the opposite camp. There were roughly 50,000 of them, cavalry and infantry. What was surprising was that these 50,000 people didn't bring any weapons. They were pretty much barehanded as they walked towards the Gantian camp at the foot of the mountain. Looking at the style of their armor, they seemed to have been recruited from nearby cities. Suman's eyes were filled with a weird expression as he looked into the distance. Behind these 50,000 unarmed people was the Talion City's army. A full 200,000 well-equipped troops were lined up in square formations as they stepped out of the camp and spread out on the plains below the mountain. The combat strength of the human race might not be as good as the monster race, but in terms of training and strict military discipline, they were better. Rows of light and heavy armored soldiers stood solemnly, orderly like they were carefully cut by knives. There was no sound at all. As for the cavalry army, when they advanced, hundreds of thousands of horse hooves advanced and retreated at the same time. There was really little noise. Just one look, and one could tell that their combat strength was really strong. Suman didn't understand at first, until the 50,000 empty-handed people were forcefully chased by the 200,000 fully equipped soldiers to the front of the camp at the foot of the mountain. Finally, a light flashed in his mind. He understood, and his expression changed drastically. They want to order these people to attack the camp. Seeing that Chai Yuan didn't understand, Suman added a few more words to explain. They are looking at us and don't dare to provoke us. Chai Yuan's eyes instantly opened wide in rage, taking half a step forwards as he stared down the mountain. As expected, those 50,000 people weren't afraid of the numerous crossbows in the camp. They directly took out tools and shoveled dirt, slowly filling up the 70 feet deep hole outside of the camp wall. At the start, these people were a little nervous, but when they saw that the camp didn't shoot out arrows, they slowly calmed down. Their speed of filling up the hole became faster and faster. Chai Yuan's face was dark and sunken as he suddenly looked dozens of miles away at the 200,000 Talion City troops, only to see that in the center of the formation, close to 10,000 heavy armored soldiers were protecting a large flag with the word Cloud standing tall. Under that flag, there were dozens of people dressed in luxurious silver armor. The one at the helm was around 20 years old. His face was thin and slightly ashen, similar to Yu Guanyin. At this moment, he was looking over proudly, his eyes filled with a mocking expression. This Yu Linghuan is bullying me. Does he really think that I, Chai Yuan, can't do anything to him? He only felt a vengeful energy in the depths of his heart, unable to spit it out, making him feel really depressed. Suman followed his gaze and looked over. As expected, It was the prince of Taoyuan City, the one that Yu Guanyin doted on the most. However, following which his eyes were attracted by another person. His body was pretty much the same as Chai Zhou, who was 12 feet tall. He was riding on a giant beast whose shoulders were 8 feet tall. Who knows how many layers of armor he was wearing? The outermost blood-red armor had 10 spikes on it. At his waist hung a water tank-sized chain hammer. It was also blood-red and looked really vicious. His aura was even more ferocious than those famous ferocious beasts. That person is Taoyuan City Bloodhammer Wei Ku. He can't be underestimated. Suman turned around and saw that Chai Yuan's face was twisting. A fierce glow flashed in his eyes, like he was on the verge of exploding. He hurriedly persuaded, "Duke Chai, think about the big picture." His tone was filled with helplessness. Actually, not only Taoyuan City wasn't willing to attack at this moment. Gantian Mountain also didn't dare to provoke them at this moment. One was unwilling, one didn't dare. Naturally, one could see who was stronger. Using the strength of one city to go up against 3 cities working together. Gantian Mountain had the pride of an overlord and wouldn't fear it. However, when a young master was doubtful, the people's hearts were shaken and the wind and rain was blowing. Gantian Mountain's chances of winning were less than 20%. Even if they could win, it would be a tragic victory. In the next few years, they might not be able to recover their strength. The gains didn't make up for the losses. Chai Yuan's face was changing between green and white, following which his heart moved slightly as he looked behind him, only to see, tens of miles away, there were people moving about, dust rising up like there was a huge army slowly moving over. He couldn't help but be furious, knowing that Jiefu City had already sent troops. The scouts under his command had already reported to him, so he wasn't surprised and had already taken precautions. However, at this moment, it made him really furious. He wanted to go all out and have a huge battle with them. He wanted to let these clowns see whether or not his reputation on the battlefield was fake. However, in just a moment, Chai Yuan forcefully suppressed the hatred in his heart. He had fought for tens of years and naturally knew the importance of things. He pretty much gritted his teeth and said coldly, "We can't defend this place. Order the troops to prepare to retreat to Weapon Hiding Canyon." Looking below, those 50,000 people had already filled up the hole and were casually dismantling the wooden walls and horse barricades. He gritted his teeth. "Tell the people in front to back down. Commander Su, please lead the troops to cover the back." Suman's expression turned serious, solemnly cupping his fists. "Duke, don't worry. I will be able to hold on until the army retreats safely." A moment later, the military order was given. The soldiers of the 3 towns stationed at the foot of the mountain began to withdraw from the camp in an orderly manner. Even if they retreated, they were really organized. Only then did Chai Yuan nod his head in satisfaction, just as he was about to lead his horse away. Suddenly, he saw a flag rise up. Looking closely, one could see that it wrote, "Wherein died, Gantian Mountain has no generals. Chai Yuan is useless, exhausting 3 armies. Our army is empty-handed and doesn't dare to fight. 500,000 troops are all cowards." The 36 words pierced into their eyes. Below, those 200,000 people all laughed out loud, their voices filled with mocking intent. Chai Yuan was shocked, his eyes turning black. He couldn't suppress the aura in his body, spitting out a mouthful of fresh blood. After a long while, he slowly recovered. His eyes were instantly filled with rage as he stared down the mountain at the teen, who was laughing maniacally in delight. This Yuling Huan is asking to die. With a thought, Chai Yuan totally gave up on retreating. It wasn't that he lost his mind and didn't care about the big picture. It was that if he retreated today, then the fighting spirit and morale of the hundreds of thousands of troops under him would be destroyed. It wasn't that they couldn't win, but because of many worries, they had no choice but to retreat. However, since the enemy had forced them to such a state, then even if blood dyed the yellow sand, he would let these people know that he, Blood Bear Chai Yuan, couldn't underestimate the troops of Gantian Mountain. Chapter 312. Thinking about it, Chai Yuan made up his mind. Suman's eyes were filled with rage as he half knelt down. Duke, please give the order. With our situation, we can only fight to the death. Even if I die on the battlefield, I will die with the enemy. Great. Chai Yuan laughed out loud, filled with a solemn and cruel aura. In the next instance, he was startled once more, only to see the situation beneath the mountain change once more. Only to see Yu Linghuan, who was originally sitting proudly on his horse, suddenly turn ashen white, like he was filled with fear. Moreover, this panic was rapidly spreading. In just a moment, the 10 over silver-armored cavalry along with the 10,000 heavy-armored personal guards around suddenly became chaotic. It was no longer like before, where everyone's wills were as strong as a fortress and they were as united as a piece of iron. Even the large banner with the 36 words written on it was also put away. 15 minutes later, the 20 armies retreated one by one. They retreated back into the camp. Before this, their morale was high, and they were filled with disdain towards Gantian Mountain. At this moment, they retreated in a slightly haggard manner. They didn't even bother about the 50,000 empty-handed subordinate soldiers in front of them. They also didn't have any intentions of continuing to defend in the opposite camp. They directly retreated like they were afraid their speed wasn't fast enough. Many of the heavy items were forcefully tossed aside. What was going on? Chai Yuan was totally confused. The rage in his chest was still the same. However, he didn't understand what Yu Linghuan was trying to do, baiting the enemy to attack. There didn't seem to be a need. How was it possible that there were changes at the back? Talion City was west of the Cloud Continent, a small island 250,000 miles in the ocean. After decades of war, they occupied 4 provinces close to the shore. The enemies nearby were only Yunxia, Blazing Flame, and Gantian Mountain. After joining hands with Yunxia and Blazing Flame, they didn't have anything to worry about. Did Yunxia City or Blazing Flame City tear up the alliance? Suman was also finding it weird. The moment he said those words, he shook his head. If the 2 cities wanted to stab their allies, they wouldn't have chosen to do it when the 3 cities were still below the Cloud Ocean to hunt together. Looking back, only to see that the 200,000 troops from Jiefuju City who had just arrived were also retreating. Compared to Talion City, it was even more panicked. After a few miles, they split into several groups and frantically fled into the distance. It was as if he wished he could grow 2 more legs under his feet. There were even cases of armies fighting for the right of way, and they even trampled each other at some narrow junctions. Suman couldn't help but feel even more puzzled. He knew that something must have happened, and it must have a huge impact. Who knows what happened to make Yu Linghuan, Jiefu, and Floating Frost City so terrified? The hidden guard system of Gantian Mountain was built by Zhong Weiran and was known for being accurate and accurate. Why was he so useless this time? Even the people of Jiefu City knew. However, they were still kept in the dark. Chai Yuan also looked at his hands with a blank expression. He thought to himself, when did my killing chi become so powerful? As soon as his fighting spirit was aroused, these people immediately retreated. Although he was called a famous general, he wasn't at a level where people feared him. At this moment, he wanted to chase, but he also suspected that there was a trap. Just as he didn't understand, he suddenly saw an emperor light fly over. Flying message talisman? Chai Yuan looked out and saw that it was a talisman in the air. He couldn't help but be startled. When did their Gantian Mountain become so generous? They didn't use the cheap and reusable red Swiftbird, but they used this flying talisman that was several times faster, but each one was worth a grade 5 beast crystal. He felt even weirder in his heart. Chai Yuan eagerly grabbed out with his hand, using true chi to grab the talisman. Then, his expression was extremely interesting. Suddenly, he was overjoyed, and then he was filled with disbelief. Suman was impatient, anxiously asking, Duke, what happened to Gantian Mountain for them to use the flying talisman to send a message? Only then did Chai Yuan's expression return to normal. His hand trembled slightly as he passed the talisman to Suman. It's news from Zhonggang. He said that he heard rumors today. My ruler found a beast tomb a few days ago under the cloud ocean. He also used 800 energy-destroying crossbows to attack from tens of miles away. He also borrowed the strength of the beast horde to wipe out the 4,000 cloud ships of the 3 cities of Talion. In the end, only 100 or so cloud ships managed to escape. I heard that the Ling Yun sect disciples were there. Not only did the ruler not take any responsibility, but he also reaped the benefits of forcing back the beast wave and returned with loads. After saying that, Chai Yuan's expression was slightly hesitant. I heard that the official news hasn't spread over. It was news from some cloud ships that luckily escaped from the Alliance army. Can Commander Suman believe it? Was Suman also in a trance? A beast tomb? Even the smallest scale would have 8 million grade 4 beast crystals and above. It was several times more than what Gantian Mountain earned under the cloud ocean. And those 4,000 cloud ships that were once so arrogant were all destroyed under the cloud ocean just like that. More than 1,400,000 elite soldiers were all wiped out just like that. The first thought that appeared in his mind was, how was that possible? Then he thought back to the Talion city army that retreated. If it wasn't for such a huge change that damaged their strength, with how arrogant Yuling Huan was, how would he be in such a panic? Many thoughts flashed in his mind. In the end, Suman took in a deep breath. If it was someone else, I wouldn't believe it. But if it was the ruler, there's a chance. Ruler? I also believe it. So it's time for the sky to change. Chai Yuan raised his head and looked into the sky. His face was stiff like iron. In his eyes, there was like a volcano that was on the verge of exploding. For the ruler to have such a son, he would definitely be smiling in the underworld. In just a few months, he caused Argantian Mountain to recover and prosper. The ruler didn't shame our father's prestige. 2 streams of tears suddenly flowed down from the corner of Chai Yuan's eyes. Chai Yuan tilted his head, using true qi to cause the tears to instantly evaporate. Then, he raised his head and laughed out loud once more. Suddenly, he held the huge axe in his hand and pointed it forward. The ruler is so talented. Our Gantian Mountain will regain our old land and unify Donglin. Before he returns to Donglin, you and I can wipe out the 700,000 troops of Talion City as a gift. Different from before, this time he didn't have the solemn will to die, but he was still filled with fighting spirit. Green veins popped out on Chai Yuan's arms. Before this, he had accumulated a stomach full of rage and needed to vent it out. Suman was startled, following which he laughed involuntarily. Since Vast Country Duke has such intentions, then Suman will accompany you. However, the important matter is to send people to Huanlong Province to contact the old forces of Gantian Mountain. Old forces? That's exactly what I was thinking. They've really gotten off too easy. Breaking out into a laugh, a mocking smile appeared on Chai Yuan's face. When Gantian Mountain was at its strongest, it had 9 provinces of land. This Huanlong province was one of them, and was originally snatched from Talion City. Then, when Zhong Weiran disappeared, this province fell back into the hands of Talion City. A small portion of it was because Gantian Mountain took the initiative to retreat. A large portion of it was because the various cities in Huanlong province all betrayed them. At this moment, who knows how those city and country lords would react when they found out that the 3 city lords working together weren't the opponent of their ruler. Not only did they not gain anything from the Insha Hunt, but they also lost most of their cloud ships. Would they regret betraying them so decisively? The current him especially wanted to see the expressions of these people who knew what was going on. He also knew that these people were worried about not having a way to join Gantian Mountain. Before this, the rebellion of Jiefu City and Fushuang City made him annoyed but also helpless. At this moment, he wanted to let that kid Yuling Huan know what it felt like to be surrounded by enemies. On Psychic Island, Zhongsho had changed to another place. He knew that Xiaohan had a huge business to discuss. Zhongsho didn't show any courtesy, directly moving from the pier to the Kongqi Pavilion on the island. As for Lin Ji, he was blocked outside. Zhongsho had already expected this person's reason for coming and was too lazy to summon him. He wasn't willing to waste time on this matter. which means that your Conchi sect wants to take 500,000 grade 4 and above military equipment and spiritual artifact orders from Gigantean Mountain. You also need to participate in the Dragon Canyon matter? Then what benefits does Gigantean Mountain have? Following which Zhongsho's tone changed, saying weirdly, "You all really have confidence in me. You must know that in the past, Gigantean Mountain's income in terms of grade 4 beast crystals was only 300,000. 500,000 a year, what a huge business. That was in the past. Now that the spiritual wave is about to rise, my Conchi sect is really confident in the ruler in Gigantean Mountain." Xiaohan muttered in his heart, not mentioning the expansion of Gigantean Mountain. Next year, their military strength would close to double. Just the wealth of 50 to 60 million in your pocket is enough to make people envious. Even if you didn't earn anything from now on, you could last for decades. You were really rich enough to rival a country. Even the Conchi sect's treasury was only comparable to that. However, he couldn't say that out loud. As for benefits, following me to Gantian City will be 5 Xuanwu ancestors and 3 return to Sun Spirit Masters to help your highness. My sect doesn't participate in worldly battles, but if other sects attack Gantian Mountain, your highness can use these people. Zhongsho pursed his lips, his heart filled with disdain. Just these 8 people, and they want to take 500,000 worth of business? In the next instance, he heard Xiaohan say, "Naturally, my sect will help your highness to block experts above the ascended realm to the best of our ability." Only then did Zhongsho understand. He was a little tempted. However, he still asked curiously, "I am curious about your sect. Aren't you afraid that Lingyun's sect will be annoyed? These Donglin sects might not be willing to see your Conchi sect work with Gigantean Mountain." Xiaohan's expression changed. It was obvious that he knew what the outcome would be once this agreement was made. But then, he chuckled, and his face was filled with determination. Zhongsho instantly understood. Pill Fountain sect disciples relied on pill refining to cultivate. Conchi sect was the same, comprehending the path of heaven and earth when crafting artifacts. Chapter 313. The simple theory was that the more spiritual artifacts Conchi sect crafted, the more disciples they would develop. The number of talisman and spiritual artifacts crafted each year in Donglin Cloud Continent was limited. A large portion of it was split up by the various sections. Unlike Pill Fountain sect, the various sects had to purchase pills from them. During such a time when the spiritual wave was rising, developing disciples was even more urgent. This was a fundamental conflict between the sects, and it wasn't something that could be suppressed just because Lingyun's sect was the overlord of the east of the cloud world. However, Zhongsho still hesitated. Military equipment crafting was an important weapon of the country. How could it be controlled by outsiders? A million order could help him gain an ally, but it would also affect the growth of the blacksmithing industry and the spiritual blacksmiths in Gantian Mountain. Thinking about it for a moment, Zhongsho had an idea. He smiled. My Gantian Mountain temporarily doesn't need 500,000 beast crystals worth of spiritual artifacts. How about 300,000 for the first 5 years? Help us develop 60 grade 4 spiritual blacksmiths. Naturally, all expenses will be borne by my Gantian Mountain. They will be outer sect disciples of your sect, but they will have to listen to my orders. Also, please redesign the armor and weapons of the Black Fox Iron Cavalry for my Gantian Mountain. They will be similar to the Blood Cloud Cavalry's quasi-grade 4 spiritual artifacts. Once it is completed, Zhongsho will personally place an order for 5,000 sets. Xiaohan immediately hissed and sucked in a breath of cold air. Originally, the number was reduced to 300,000 to develop 60 grade 4 spiritual blacksmiths, which was already past his bottom line. He felt even more displeased in his heart. This young fiend king was really scheming. However, when he heard the promise of the 5,000 sets of grade 4 quasi-spiritual artifacts, Xiaohan's heart was slightly shaken. This was different from those half-broken blood cloud armors, but a true quasi-grade 4 spiritual artifact. On the market, a grade 4 spiritual artifact was equal to 300 grade 4 beast crystals, the quasi-grade 4 price was halved. Along with the design costs, this deal was at least 2 million. Frowning and deep in thought, Xiaohan was hesitating, only to see Zhong Yuan once again go upstairs to report. Ruler, Xinshui, Yui, Ringong, and Lizhan city lords are all downstairs and have been waiting for a long time. He said that he has something to discuss with Jun Shang. Zhongsho blinked and didn't understand. These 4 city lords are the smartest and most cunning among the dozens of city lords who had followed him into the Cloud Sea. However, he had already discussed with these people before and had already given them their share of the rewards. He wondered why these people were looking for him at this moment. Looking at Zhong Yuan's face, it was obvious that he wanted to say something but stopped. Zhongsho used his spiritual perception to explore the bottom of the building. In just a moment, he already knew the reason. Lin Ji wasn't the only one below. It seemed that the envoys of Raging Flame City and Yunxia City had arrived as well. In the end, we still have to fight. What's the point of seeing those fellows? You just have to chase them away. Zhong Yuan frowned. Zhong Yuan also has such intentions. However, these people seem to have someone to rely on. Following which he didn't say anything, only placing 3 golden name cards in front of Zhongsho. Zhongsho picked it up and flipped it slightly before breaking out into a laugh. What a fellow! Spiritual house sect, 2 aristocratic families, what a huge background. Yuntao and Blazing Flame City. As he had guessed, they all had sex and power supporting them. Their chess pieces had suffered a crushing defeat, and they were prepared to fight bare-chested. However, he had even forcefully chased out Daoming and Xuanzu's sex. Even powers like the Sky Fox Shui family out of Gantia Mountain. The elite disciples they sent were all killed by him. Why would he fear these 3 powers that were obviously weaker than him? If they didn't directly interfere, then it was okay. However, if he noticed that these 3 powers were interfering, he would definitely teach them a lesson. He was someone who had someone to rely on, although Wei Su wanted him to rely on himself. However, if he faced a dangerous situation that he couldn't handle, he didn't believe that Song Xingdao would stand aside and not do anything. Casually tossing it aside without much care, Zhongsho's eyes squinted, following which his expression returned to normal. Let them come up to talk. It is good to meet them and see what they are up to. The envoy of Taoyuan City was still Lin Ji. As for the envoys of the other 2 cities, they were all new faces. It was obvious that they were extremely tactful and humble. Each of them only brought 1 or 2 assistants with them. Zhongsho took a look and didn't pay much attention to them. Apart from that surnamed Lin whose martial pack cultivation could be considered decent, the others were just at the martial ancestor realm. There was also a spirit master who wasn't of a high grade following them, so they weren't worth paying attention to. The ones who paid more attention to them were the city lords of the 4 subordinate cities. After they came up, they greeted him like subjects. Zhongsho nodded his head slightly, asking curiously, "Why did the 4 of you come to see me?" His feelings towards the 4 of them were really complicated. When they first entered the Cloud Ocean, they would occasionally meet large beast groups. The 4 of them tried their best to avoid them like they wanted to preserve their strength. However, when they arrived at the beast tomb, their attitude changed. Each time they met an enemy, they would charge at the front, afraid that they would fall behind. The city lord of Xinshui City was called Luo Shui. When the 4 of them exchanged glances with one another, this person was the first to speak. "The 4 of us are willing to give up 4 cities to be under the ruler." Zhongsho's face froze up. All of a sudden, he was confused. Weren't these fellows his subordinate cities in the past? Only after a short while did he understand. These 4 cities wanted to become directly under Gantian Mountain. However, at this moment, he was more and more confused. Were the 4 of them crazy? Although the subordinate cities were under Gantian Mountain, they had to take care of themselves. The city lord was pretty much hereditary, like a vassal with huge power. As for the cities directly under them, they would take over all political and military power to Gantian Mountain. Did the 4 of them eat grass and lose their minds? They didn't want to be a vassal king and came to be his subjects? According to what he knew, these 4 cities were all big cities in the 5 provinces under his jurisdiction. Each of them had 150,000 elite soldiers. He couldn't help but look towards Xianyuan Irin curiously. His eyes seemed to be saying, "Do I, Zhongsho, really have the aura of a king? As long as I casually shake, I can make people bow down?" Xianyuan Irin was helpless, viciously rolling her eyes at him. Her meaning was obvious. "I am sure you don't have such a thing." Zhongsho totally didn't understand the situation. He could only temporarily toss aside the matter of the four of them and not bother about them. He turned towards Lin Ji and the others and asked, "Why did the three of you come?" Lin Ji didn't have the arrogance he had when they first met and was about to speak. Hu Zhongyuan, who was sitting at the side, scoffed coldly. "My ruler doesn't like people standing and talking to him." Lin Ji's face instantly twisted, rage flashing in his eyes. However, after struggling for a moment, he knelt down in the end. At this moment, the situation had totally changed. The three cities of Taoyuan suffered heavy losses, while Gantian Mountain was like the sun rising. The strength of the two sides had totally swapped positions, and he had no choice but to admit defeat. Who would have thought that such a huge change would happen in a short 20 days? This Zhongsho in front of him was really able to flip his hand and make the clouds and rain. The powers of the three cities were all played in his palms. Hu Zhongyuan felt great, thinking back to tens of days ago when this person was so arrogant, forcing Gantian Mountain to give up half a province. He instantly felt indescribably carefree. Zhongsho stared viciously at him, but he didn't say anything to stop him. As for Lin Ji, he suppressed his rage and said, "I am under the orders of my city, Lord Yu Guanyun, to ask your highness what you want for your highness to be willing to stop fighting. War is heartless. Once the war between our two cities starts, people will be wiped out and there will be many casualties. Our Italian city is in the wrong for this matter. Our Italian city is willing to give up half of Huanlong province to appease your highness' anger." When Zhongsho heard that, he couldn't help but laugh. This Yu Guanyun was even more shameless than he had imagined. He didn't agree or disagree, asking instead, "Do you think it is possible?" Lin Ji's eyes shone slightly. "If I were your highness, I would agree." Zhongsho shook his head. He didn't know where Lin Ji got such confidence from. This time, it was Tan Tao who spoke on behalf of Zhongsho. "If you want my Gantian Mountain to stop attacking, I can. However, in the past you have eaten and taken from Gantian Mountain. You need to spit it out. You also need to give up Tianfeng province. This is what your highness wants." Lin Ji's expression didn't change. Looking at the expressionless Zhongsho above, "What if my Italian city doesn't give it up?" Hu Zhongyuan instantly burst out laughing. "Then why doesn't my Gantian Mountain take it ourselves?" However, Lin Ji still didn't reveal any signs of panic. Instead, a strange and sinister smile surfaced on his face. "Really?" Just as Zhongsho felt a chill down his spine and felt that something wasn't right, only to see one of the blazing flame envoys behind Lin Ji, a black-robed spirit master, suddenly waved his sleeves, and tens of spiritual talismans shot out at the same time. The top of the 7th floor of the Kongshi building was instantly covered in a black mist. A few people exploded out, their auras exploding as they charged swiftly towards Zhongsho. Zhongyuan stood at the side, instantly furious. The purple lightning spear in his hand stabbed back. Maniac lightning spear intent, just one spear piercing through the person behind him. It caused the people around to be shocked. Who knew that Zhongyuan's strength would be so strong? In one strike, he killed a Xuanwu ancestor on the spot. However, that person was really courageous. Even when he was about to die, his fighting spirit still hadn't dissipated. His body suddenly exploded, turning into a blood mist. It turned into a blood mist and still charged over, wrapping around Zhongyuan's body. Although the lightning glow around Zhongyuan's body flashed and blocked it, all of a sudden he was trapped on the spot by the power that exploded out after the person died, unable to move at all. When Zhongsho saw the situation, his eyes constricted. These people really found a good chance. Gu Laikong and Zhu Junho, these two experts, were organizing the fleet and weren't by his side. Ling Feikong was a sinner and wasn't brought by his side. Only one Zhongyuan and one Li Luo could fight. At this moment, the strength around him was at its weakest. At the same time, the cold scoffs of Zhong Ling and Sure Dan spread out in his ears. A gust of wind blew, sweeping away all the black fog on the second floor. They pointed out at the same time, and two spiritual beasts formed in the air, pouncing towards where the black-robed spirit master was at. Chapter 314. The black-robed spirit master didn't dodge. Instead, he laughed out loud in a maniacal manner. The soul power around his body trembled and boiled, and a layer of bright, golden light appeared. In the blink of an eye, his entire body silently and completely disappeared. He allowed the two grade 6 spirit beasts to rip his body to shreds. As for the few people who pounced forwards, their speed greatly increased, the aura around their bodies blazing once more. 200 feet of distance was covered in an instant. Xian Yunlan's brows furrowed. In the next instant, she took out the dragon string zither and flicked it. Instantly, a ripple appeared in the air. A soft and ethereal sound rang out. The bodies of the 5 people who had pounced over trembled, and a dazed expression appeared in their eyes. Only the leader let out a chuckle. The sword in his hand trembled and began to hum. Layers of ice mist suddenly spread out, turning the surrounding 100 feet into a frozen hell. Then, the 4 people around him came to their senses. Xian Yunlan's eyes were filled with shock. Guanyun's sword? You are Yu Guanyun. Yu Guanyun instantly laughed out loud. Little girl's zither skills are not bad. Unfortunately, why help this piece of trash? This is a grievance between my Taoyuan city and Gantia Mountain. I advise you not to interfere. Whilst he spoke, he slashed out with his sword. When the sword slashed out, the ice power was so strong that it nearly froze the entire building. A snow-bright light flashed across, causing Li Luo's body to be tossed aside, spitting out blood as he retreated. Sure Dan's snow-white face turned ashen white, waving her hand once more. A human-shaped sword puppet appeared out of nowhere. The sudden sword stabbing out was able to block the chase of the other Xuanwu ancestor, saving Li Luo's life. However, at this moment, in front of Yu Guanyun, there was only Zhong Shou, Chu Shui, as well as Ruo Shui, who was heavily injured and hadn't recovered. Yu Guanyun didn't bother about the first two, only that Ruo Shui, who had no aura at all, made him slightly worried. At this moment, knowing that the situation was under his control, Yu Guanyun's actions regained his usual calmness and elegance. He strode towards Zhong Shou. City Lord Zhong really planned well this time, toying with me in the palm of your hand. The 1,700 cloud ships under his command all fell to the cloud ocean. What truly made me, Yu Guanyun, hurt so much that my head was in a mess. However, City Lord Zhong didn't think that with your body that doesn't have any skills, Yu Guanyun, only need one sword to end you? No matter how ambitious you are, no matter how smart you are, under my sword, you are nothing. Seeing Yu Guanyun leading 2 people who were both Xuanwu experts, they were all Zhong Shou. Zhong Shou, he was too careless this time. They thought that the Psychic Island was a safe place with the various sects guarding it. Thus, they let down their guard for a while. However, he didn't expect that Yu Guanyun would be so bold to directly find his way here. At this moment, he could only look toward Zhao Yanran. At this moment, only this woman had a way to turn the situation around. Who knows, she might have a way to force these few people back. If he really had to personally act here, then it would be a little problematic. However, he saw her directly turn her head away, her country-toppling face revealing a rare, helpless expression. What she meant was that she, Zhao Yanran, also had no way. It was up to her. On the contrary, Qiao Han, who Zhong Shou didn't want to see, stood up and said coldly, "Attacking on my Kongqi Pavilion's land, you really are bold. Don't you know that the various sects and powers aren't allowed to kill one another near Psychic Island? Do you know the consequences?" That Yu Guanyun directly laughed coldly, filled with a mocking intent. Without half the sects in Donglin Tai allowing it, how would I dare to do this? My actions today might have offended your sect. However, a day later, my master, the Demon Cloud sect leader, will visit and your sect will be satisfied. As for the consequences, I naturally know. However, if I don't fight to the death today, am I really going to wait for this Zong show to swallow up the tens of years of foundations that my Italian city has built? As he said that, Yu Guanyin walked in front of Zong Shou. His eyes lit up. His tone also changed. Speaking of which, after this matter, who will come to investigate today's matter? Even if Miss Yanran and Miss Xian were willing to help, I, Yu Guanyin, didn't appear here from start to finish. Today's matter was just my subordinates acting recklessly. I don't know what conditions this Zong Shou gave you to let the two of you follow beside him. However, my Italian city can also pay the price. When Zhao Yanran heard that, she directly burst out into a laugh, her tone filled with mocking intent. You want to assassinate him? This monster? I think you really don't know your place. Yu Guanyin frowned, following which he didn't bother anymore. Without any hesitation, a sword sliced towards Zong Shou's neck. Xiaohan's face was ashen white. At this moment, he didn't dare to look. After sighing, he closed his eyes, thinking to himself that this future genius, the person he had high hopes for, was going to die here. What a waste, as expected. Not knowing martial arts and spells was his biggest weakness. At this moment, not to mention Yu Guanyin, who was at the peak of Xuanwu, even a random person who knew martial arts could easily take Zong Shou's life. However, in the next moment, he heard Zong Shou sigh, like he was helpless. Moments later, the spiritual energy fluctuations within the building instantly rose by several times. Numerous lightning glows exploded out at that moment. Xiaohan hurriedly opened his eyes. In the next instance, he saw an unbelievable scene. Only to see Yu Guanyin's full-powered sword actually stop in midair. To be more precise, he was firmly stopped by a delicate hand, unable to advance or retreat. The owner of that hand was Zong Shou. A huge lightning snake wrapped around Zong Shou's right arm. It seemed to provide huge strength to Zong Shou, causing him to take that sword attack head-on and not be at a disadvantage at all. Numerous purple lightning shone, striking all about, causing the building to be dyed in a layer of purple. Yu Guanyin, who was calm before, had an ashen white face. The sword in his hand had numerous cold clouds surging all about, struggling. However, it was unable to advance at all. Many lightning glows wrapped over, blasting all the cloud energy into pieces. He also felt a vast aura suppressing all about, pretty much crushing the building. The two Xuanwu ancestors behind him just wanted to help, but they were forced back several steps by this huge aura. It's a grade 6 lightning winged yang snake, a natural protector beast. Xiaohan's eyes opened wide, his expression filled with envy. However, following which he realized that this new city lord of Gantian Mountain City shouldn't cultivate in the martial path or know spells. Moreover, with just this lightning winged yang snake, it was impossible to suppress this grade 9 Xuanwu expert. It definitely wouldn't be able to block Yu Guanyin's sword with its bare hands. In the next instance, looking at the two Xuanwu ancestors who were forced back, Xiaohan had some comprehension. This is a King Path secret technique. His tone was filled with uncertainty. However, Xin Yunlan, who was beside him, had a good impression of his righteousness just now. She nodded her head and smiled. It is King Path martial arts, borrowing the strength of a country to buff one's body. Xiaohan's heart instantly surged with emotions. All of a sudden, he didn't know how to react. Suddenly, he thought back to the weird rumors that spread out from Gantian Mountain City a few months ago. Could it be that those legends that sounded preposterous and exaggerated were actually all true? Just as many thoughts were surging in Xiaohan's mind. Zong Shouxin's heart was filled with joy. Even though he was forced to act due to helplessness, the might of the combination of Little Gold and the lightning-winged yang snake caused him to be pleasantly surprised. Using his bare hands to take Yu Guanyin's sword attack head-on, he was actually able to block it without any injuries. His conjecture not long ago was really possible. This insight, mysterious lightning body training art was terrifyingly strong. Naturally, it wasn't without a price. The vital energy in his body surged, and his arm felt numb. Just as Zong Shou felt that his left hand had finally regained some feeling. only to hear Yu Guanyin holler in shock and rage. "You actually know martial arts?" When he said that, Yu Guanyin was pretty much hollering as he pulled back the Guanyin sword. Then, sword after sword crazily stabbed out, only to hear 3 consecutive sharp kong 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 sounds. At the last sword, that Guanyin sword was grabbed tightly by Zhong Shou. Yu Guanyin tried to pull back, using 990,000 kilograms of strength, but he was unable to pull it out. Only when he saw the killing intent in Samuraim's eyes did he come back to his senses. He decisively gave up on the sword. His body was like lightning as he tried to retreat. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed, and then he smiled. The grade 6 lightning-winged sword on his waist suddenly came out of its sheath. "It is impolite not to reciprocate. Why don't you try my sword?" When the sword light flipped out, the lightning-winged yang snake on Zhong Shou's arm directly charged into the sword body. It actually merged into one with the lightning snake bee soul that was in it. In the eyes of everyone, they only felt a vast purple lightning glow suddenly slash hundreds of feet out. It even broke open the roof of the building with one sword. An eye-piercing glow. It caused everyone in the building to feel their eyes light up, pretty much unable to see anything. Yu Guanyin hollered furiously, pretty much in despair as he saw the sword light slash over. He was pretty much unable to react, only feeling the lightning glow explode and crush the maniacal energy behind him. His entire body was instantly sliced apart by the purple glow. At this moment, Zhong Yuan finally broke away from the blood mist. He turned around and stabbed out with his spear once more. Just as the purple lightning glow was at its brightest, the spear heavily smashed the throat of another Xuanwu ancestor. A moment later, the eye-piercing glow slowly recovered. When everyone's vision recovered once more. For feet in front of Zhong Shou, Taoyuan City, Lord Yu Guanyin's body was broken into 2 as he laid paralyzed on the ground. His body was covered in lightning burn marks, his intestines flowing out. He died in such a tragic manner that it was hard to describe. In front of Zhong Yuan, there was also a Xuanwu ancestor whose head and body were broken into 2. Chapter 315. At this moment, although there were still 3 assassins within the building, all of them had Xuanwu cultivation. However, no one cared about them anymore. No one felt that the 3 of them were of any threat anymore. Everyone's eyes were focused on Yu Guanyin's corpse. There was mockery, pity, and disbelief. Their gazes were all extremely complicated. Xiaoan was still in a daze, thinking to himself that the overlord who once ruled the west of the Cloud Continent for 20 years, the king of the West Ocean, really died just like that. What an amusing way to die. Not only was Xiaoan shocked, but the 4 city lords who didn't know what to do after the assassination started were also at a loss. With Xin Shui city lord Luo Shui as the leader, the 4 of them suggested to change their subordinate cities to directly under them. There was actually another reason, and they had no choice but to do so. However, today they personally saw Zhong Shou receive the sword with his bare hands and was totally unharmed. Moreover, the Taoyuan city lord who had been famous for many years was killed in one sword. All of a sudden, they didn't know whether or not they should feel happy for themselves. At that moment, they originally thought that Zhong Shou was definitely going to die, and they were regretting it in their hearts. However, a moment later, the situation took a turn for the worse, much to their surprise. So their new Gantian Mountain Lord, the young ruler, apart from his strategy being outstanding and unparalleled scheming, even his martial path was so strong. So strong that Taoyuan City Lord Yu Guanyin, who was Xuanwu grade 9, couldn't take one sword from Zhong Shou. Just now, Xiaoan said that it was some King Path secret technique. They all knew about that. Borrowing the strength of a country, the strength of tens of thousands of troops. However, no matter what, that was Zhong Shou's own ability, following which, the 4 of them were the same as Xiaohan, recalling those preposterous rumors. Now that they thought about it, there was a 90% chance that it was true. His Highness really hid his strength deeply, hiding his jewels. What was hidden in that thin and weak body was an unparalleled sharpness. The moment it appeared, it made one feel a chill down one's spine. He had comprehended the King Path secret technique, and his strength was several times stronger than Yu Guanyin. However, he didn't show it for dozens of years. To think that the new Monster King of Gantian was willing to lay low for such a long time. Thinking about it carefully, this Taoyuan city lord was really laughable. Running over to assassinate him without even understanding the situation. Wasn't this the same as running into Zhongsho's blade? After killing Yu Guanyin, the blood within Zhongsho's body was still a little restless. Although it wasn't a big problem, the dual meridians were in conflict due to the sword energy attacks. A series of coughs came from his mouth, as if his heart and lungs were being torn apart. There was nothing he could do about it. He had to pay a price for using this person to test out a new method to defeat his enemies. After a few breaths, he finally managed to recover. He did not pay attention to the other Xuanwu ancestors upstairs, allowing Zhong Yuan and the others to deal with the killing. He walked slowly towards Lin Ji, who was still in a daze and could not believe that his master had died. His gaze turned cold as he slashed out with a sword light, directly beheading that person. When the blood light splattered, Zhongsho didn't even bother to take a look. When the building totally calmed down, he gave out a self-mocking laugh, hiding my strength and biding my time. It seems like there are some benefits. This Yu Guanyin can be considered a huge problem for me. I was just worrying about not being able to solve it. Who knew that he would run in front of me himself? Scoff. He is asking to die. To think that he was able to stand tall in Taoyuan City for so many years and be called a hero by others. I have never seen such a dumb person with no eyes. Zhao Yinran opened her mouth in annoyance. Even when her tone was weird, her aura was still really alluring. To think that you can still laugh. You knew that you could be assassinated, but you were still so careless and let them find chance. You're also lucky. Although this person doesn't know King Path martial arts, he is good at formations. However, the 1,000 cloud ships under him were all destroyed. If not, the outcome of today's battle wouldn't have been decided. Forget it. I have no right to scold you. I only want to ask you, how should we deal with the aftermath? She finally remembered that even she was careless and didn't expect this assassination. Zhao Yanran's face flushed red. Zhongsho mocked. Wasn't the trouble today all because of you, Zhao Yanran? If you didn't randomly spread rumors, my name Zhongsho would have shocked the world. Why would there be so much trouble? His brows furrowed, and he took in a deep breath. A moment later, Zhongsho opened his mouth once more. Yu Guanyun's assassination failed, and he died in the hands of Zhong Yuan. He deserved it. The other sects won't have anything to say. When Zhong Yuan heard that, his lips twitched. He was going to be the scapegoat for his ruler again. He alone killed Yu Guanyin. Killing Yu Guanyun. Who knows if others would believe it? His face didn't show anything as he nodded his head numbly. Zhongsho looked towards Xiao Han. This was a problem. Did he have to kill him to silence him? This person was actually not bad. In the blink of an eye, Zhongsho changed his mind. He thought to himself that he didn't need to hide the fact that he knew martial arts. As long as he didn't let people know that he was someone from the demon path and Tsang Shengdao's disciple, it was okay. Before Wei Su left, he mentioned that there was still a month before the Dragon Gate would open, and he would be able to view the martial saints' remnant images. This was one of the few times before the spiritual wave that he could greatly increase his strength and comprehend martial intent. He definitely wouldn't miss it. Thinking about that, Zhongsho smiled, a bright glow flashing in his eyes. Forget it. Let's just say that this Yu Guanyun died in my hands. Hang these corpses out and let those people with bad intentions see that I, Zhongsho, am someone that can be bullied? Trying to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. I really want to see their expressions now. When he said those words, Zhongsho's chest was filled with rage. In the last life, no one was able to plot against him without paying a price. It was the same in this life. That Lingyun Long Ruo really didn't want his Gantian mountain city to grow. As for the other sects, he didn't know if it was because of the wealth in their hands or because of Dragon Canyon's own Weiran, but it seemed like they were jealous of him. This time he was really pissed off. Didn't they not want him to expand and not want him to occupy Dragon Canyon? He wasn't going to let them have their wishes. Xiao Han's heart was originally ice cold. Only when Zhong Shou said those few words did he heave a sigh of relief. However, at this moment he felt a chill strike him. For some reason, he only felt that there was a violent energy wrapping around Zhong Shou's body. His eyes were slightly red, which made one's heart tremble. Just a few miles away, within another building, Xiongba and Feng Nu sat opposite each other at a table. In front of them were delicacies and celestial wine. At this moment, the two of them didn't bother about it. They just sat there quietly like they were waiting for some news. Their expressions seemed really calm, but from their breathing and their tightly clenched fists, one could see that their emotions weren't as calm as they looked on the surface. Actually, they were filled with anxiousness. Looking out of the window at the 7-story building a few miles away, Xiongba's brows furrowed. He was deep in thought as he filled his wine cup to the brim. "Brother Feng, what do you think will happen when Yu Guanyin goes?" Feng Nu's expression changed slightly as he came back to his senses from deep thought. Before replying, his eyes swept towards the Gantian mountain ships. "I think that Gu Laikong, Zhu Junho, and Ling Feikong are still on the ship and haven't noticed anything. Without the three of them, no one besides Zhong Shou is his opponent. Who knows, maybe at this moment Zhong Shou has already died in his hands. Now, we just have to see whether or not he handles his actions cleanly." Xiongba's brows were still furrowed deeply. Although he drank the wine in his cup, he didn't know how it tasted. "However, why do I feel that there might be another change this time? That Yu Guanyin's trip won't be so easy." When Feng Nu heard this, he was shocked in his heart. Earlier, an ominous feeling also surged up in his heart. He felt that this carefully planned assassination might not succeed smoothly. Who knows whether or not it was because this matter was really important. Unfortunately, the Kongqi Pavilion seemed open on all sides. Actually, there were spiritual formations within, and restrictions were really tight. Normal cultivators below grade 7 had no way to know what was going on within. How is that possible? Breaking out into a laugh, Feng Nu tossed aside all the random thoughts, directly changing the topic. "This time Yu Guanyin went alone. I feel that I have let him down. That Zhong Shou's life and death isn't his Taoyuan city's problem alone. Although it isn't his problem alone, if this Zhong Shou returns, the one with the greatest losses would be his Taoyuan city." Xiongba laughed coldly to himself. If one said that Feng Nu felt guilty, he would be the first to not believe it. He was just crying crocodile tears. Moreover, if this Zhong Shou dies, the one with the greatest benefits would still be Taoyuan City. If he doesn't go, who will? After he said that, Xiongba felt much better, and the worry in his heart lessened. It seemed like it was because he was too nervous. If that Zhong Shou was there, Blazing Flame Mountain would at least lose a province of land. If it was more serious, they might even be wiped out. However, if Zhong Shou died, not only would this crisis be solved, but they would also be able to take advantage of the situation. This kid's life and death concerned the situation in the west of Donglin. So how could he not care? Just as he was thinking about how he should plot against these two opponents and how he should split Gantian Mountain City when the news spread over, he felt that it was too late. Xiongba suddenly heard a noise from afar. Xiongba was a little unhappy at first, but then when a few sentences entered his ears suddenly trembled. In the next instance, Xiongba's body shot up. His 12 feet tall body was like a huge bird as he glided in the air. In just a dozen jumps, he was already a few miles away. He stood still on another tall building. Looking down from here, he could see the situation at the entrance of the Kongqi Pavilion. A moment later, Xiongba's face turned ashen white, only to see that in front of the pavilion, there were a few carriages and a few wooden frames. What he guessed before was that Yu Guanyin, who should have killed Zhong Shou long ago. At this moment, his body was broken into two and pinned onto a wooden frame. The other carriages also had a few corpses pinned onto them. Chapter 316. The entrance of Kongqi's sect was in an uproar as they discussed. More and more people gathered around this place. Isn't this person Taoyuan City, Lord Yuguanyin? Did I see wrongly? Looking at his appearance, I have seen him from afar. How'd he die here? It is definitely Yu Guanyin. I heard that he tried to assassinate Gantian Mountain City Lord Zhongsho, but failed and was killed on the spot. Kongqi Sect Outer Sect Deacon Xiao Han was there as a witness. He purposely hung his corpse here as a warning. Within the crowd, there was a slight change in aura. Then, the voices became chaotic, and one couldn't hear clearly. So it really is him. Most probably he couldn't beat Gantian Mountain, so he tried to assassinate. I don't know who killed him. Why is he so miserable? Hey, it seems like the situation is really going to change. Under Donglin, one side is going to be the only one. That Gantian Mountain Monster King. I thought that he took over at a young age, and the foundations that Zhong Weiran left wouldn't last for many years. Who knew that this kid would have such skills? Such a person, even if he doesn't have the strength to fight a chicken, he is still a terrifying person. This Yu Guanyun was the overlord of a generation, and he died, just like that? Who knows who killed him? Xiongba only felt his limbs turn cold. He didn't pay attention to the words of the people behind him. He exchanged glances with Feng Nu, who was faster than him and had rushed over before him. He could clearly feel the coldness in his heart. With Yu Guanyun's death, the entire Taoyuan city had no one to take charge. Wouldn't Zhongsho be even more unrestrained and unable to be cured? He was shocked. Yu Guanyun was at the peak of the Earth Chakra level, not far from the Ascended Realm. Who was by Zhongsho's side to have such ability? To be able to kill him on the spot without being able to retreat? The few Xuanwu ancestors that the three cities sent over to participate didn't even survive? Thinking about it, Xiongba looked around, only to see that there were tens of people standing still nearby, looking at the wooden frames on the carriages. He recognized a few of them. Demon Cloud Sect was in charge of Psychic Island, and it was this person who had given them a Spirit Master Death Warrior. He was about to pass away, so he wasn't afraid of death. There were also the Shui family, the Mysterious Cloud Sect, the Xuanzu Sect, the Daoming Sect, the Demon Flag Sect, the Hidden Sword Manor, and the deacon who often gave him benefits and tried to win him over. They were either frowning in silence or looking worried, but their faces were all pale and unsightly. Following which, Xiongba's heart shook and a sense of danger rose up in his heart. His eyes instinctively looked towards the entrance of the Kongqi sect. Only Zhongsho was walking out of the door. His icy cold eyes were looking right at him and Feng Nu, and that undisguised cold killing intent was practically able to completely freeze him. In his heart, he knew that after today, this young man's name would spread throughout the 3 mountains and 5 peaks. Everyone under the heavens would know. He was only 14 years old, but he was already the overlord of a country. At this moment, a few hundred li away, there was a small boat gliding above the sea of clouds. It didn't have the huge body of the cloud ships, but it was tens of times faster when it glided within the cloud ocean. Sitting at the bow of the boat was Long Ruo, who didn't use much spiritual energy. He just released his soul to sense the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and naturally, there was a suitable wind force which caused this small boat to swiftly travel in the air. In front of him was Jingtao Zhenren, who had separated from Zhongsho not long ago. Speaking of which, he most probably made plans before entering the beast tomb to lure you in. Seeing Jingtao nod his head, Long Ruo instantly broke out into a laugh. What a cunning kid. It seems like I can't blame Senior Master for this matter. This kid's plans are exquisite, directly targeting one's heart. If it was anyone else, they would have fallen for it and had no choice. Even I was schemed against by him. I thought that he'd hire my sect disciples to board, and I was really worried that the 3 cities would attack them. Actually, although this kid is really scheming, his personality is not bad, and he is really kind. Moreover, our Lingyun sect's gains this time aren't small. Although he was used by Zhongsho, Jingtao still had a good impression of him. Especially when before he got off the boat, Zhongsho personally gifted him some corpse-harboring pinnacle swordgrass as an apology, which made him really touched. This teen was still a good kid, but as a city lord, sometimes he had no choice and had no choice. Spending 20 days with him, he had a certain feeling. This Zhong Shou was actually really indifferent to power and didn't have much ambition, like he had other goals. Suddenly his heart moved. Jing Tao raised his head and stared at Long Ruo with a burning gaze. Didn't junior nephew Long say that you want to observe the meteor falling 10 days later on Psychic Island to comprehend the sword intent? Today you left so early. What is your intention? Long Ruo still sat upright, not intending to hide anything as he said expressionlessly. If I didn't leave early, those people would be worried about our Lingyun sect. How would they dare to attack that Zhong Shou? Jing Tao only felt a chill in his heart, his brows furrowing. Gantian Mountain returned with a huge haul. Their power will definitely swell. However, in my eyes, at most they will recover to when Zhong Weiran was still alive. Even if our sect doesn't act, the other sects will think of ways to break it apart. That Zhong Shou has no cultivation, and anyone in the sect can kill him. Why does junior nephew Long have to see him as an enemy? Junior nephew's prejudice against that Zhong Shou is so deep. I know that in the past you forced him into the sect. Why do you need to do that? If this kid is an outer sect disciple, then Gantian Mountain can be our wings. Senior Master Jing Tao, please be careful with your words. Long Ruo finally showed some rage, like the weak spot in his heart was suddenly stabbed. He was instantly furious. Only a moment later did he forcefully suppress the rage in his heart. Xin Yuantong has already ascended and only has a year to deal with normal matters. He is about to step down. As for the Xian Mountain City Lord position, if nothing goes wrong, it will be Zhong Shou. Do you know how much land Gantian Mountain will have under its rule? I think, Senior Master, you're the one who is obsessed with that Zhong Shou. If this kid doesn't die, our Lingyun won't be at ease. Jing Tao was instantly furious. Those few words of scolding made him even more annoyed. However, due to Long Ruo's direct disciple identity, he couldn't do anything. How would he not know? Xian Mountain City was slightly weaker, but it still had 3 provinces. If this kid took over as the Xian Mountain City Lord, Gantian Mountain's power would expand. It would be the same as 1/5 of Donglin Cloud Continent being in their hands. The foundations of a dynasty were rising in the west of Donglin. However, even if Zhong Shou could unify Donglin, how much influence would it have on Lingyun's sect? Lingyun's sect was above the normal world. When the few dynasties in Donglin were at their peak, they weren't able to affect the survival of Lingyun's sect. As long as they were skilled, they could even rely on them. Today, those few generations of royal families had already disappeared, but Lingyun's sect still existed in the world. What if this kid doesn't die? Lingyun won't be at ease. What a preposterous theory. This Zhong Shou is a little different. Long Ruo's brows furrowed tightly, but he couldn't say why. He only instinctively wasn't willing to see this kid have higher achievements. Since he knew that after he rejected this Zhong Shou, not only did he not go silent, but he was doing so well, his days were really good. In his heart, he was more and more disgusted. More and more he rejected him. If this kid really unifies Donglin one day, then what would he be? He was shocked in his heart and knew that his Dao heart had fallen into a demonic barrier. Long Ruo's brows furrowed, and he didn't speak. A moment later, he calmed himself down. The demon barrier was because of this Zhong Shou. Wiping this kid out was the easiest and fastest way. From now on, he naturally didn't need to care. Senior Master doesn't need to care about this matter. I heard that Senior Master obtained many corpse harboring pinnacle swordgrass. Why don't you return early and go into secluded meditation to break through? Jing Tao's chest rose and fell intensely. He wasn't angry and instead smiled. Forget it, I won't care about this matter anymore. However, I think that teen is indiscernible and not as simple as he looks. You might not be able to do as you wish. I said before that Senior Master doesn't need to worry about it. Just as he said that, a golden talisman sped through the air. Looking at where it came from the direction of Psychic Island. Long Ruo casually took it. When it entered his hand, his body shook slightly. His originally gloomy eyes became even more sinister at this moment. Jing Tao Jinren glanced at it. only to see that it roughly had the words, "Zhongsho isn't dead. Yu Guanyin is dead. Hanging corpse for public display." He instantly laughed out loud. "This is the outcome you want? Forget it. Long Ruo, you take care of yourself. Let's just hope that in the future you don't cause trouble for our sect." This kid's intelligence was really deep, something Jing Tao rarely saw in his life. He really couldn't see through him. If one day he wants to take revenge, it would be something our Ling Yun's sect wouldn't be able to take. I advise you to either mend your relationship with him or go all out to kill him. After saying that, Jing Tao wasn't willing to be on the same boat as Long Ruo. He directly stepped on the spiritual sword that he got from the beast tomb, riding the sword and heading in another direction. "I see that your heart is already filled with demons, and you are worried. I hope that your trip to the dragon-gathering mountain dragon gate won't disgrace the name of our Ling Yun sect." Long Ruo's expression didn't change, sitting on the spot and not bothering about Jing Tao's words. Even if the wind calmed down and the light boat stopped, he still didn't bother. This time he really miscalculated. His eyelids raised as he looked towards Psychic Island. 10 months ago, when he first met Zhongsho, he was shocked. That kid was still in a dangerous situation and was fleeing for his life. A few years later, this Zhongsho had jumped over and became the ruler of the west of the Cloud Continent. A mistake in his thoughts caused such a talent to be left out of his door. After today, within the sect, there would be many voices of blame. This matter concerned the fight for the future sect leader position. It wasn't like he didn't have any opponents in the sect. Who was it that helped that Zhongsho kill Yu Guanyin? Why were Zhao Yanran and Xin Yunlan so close to him? They even didn't mind saying that he would cause a sect wiping out calamity. Even Lei Dong had high hopes for that Zhongsho. He suddenly thought back to the marriage between Han Nishui and Xin Yuaniren. It seemed like this matter could be done. Chapter 317. South of Xi'an Province, Shijie City region. Snow flew everywhere. Near the end of autumn, a sudden snowstorm covered the entire area within a radius of several thousand kilometers in a frosty white color. Rimble brought a bunch of people to gallop on the snow. They rode on grade 4 Windrider foals, their bodies wrapped in grade 6 Fire Bear leather, which was why they didn't feel any bumps as they galloped. Even in the extreme cold, they felt their bodies were warm. However, after galloping for 5 days and 5 nights, even with his Xuanwu ancestor cultivation, he couldn't take it and felt tired. The reason why he was suffering such pain was mostly because of his ruler. Since Zhongsho brought 1,000 fully loaded ships back to shore at Rainbow City, he didn't return to Gantian Mountain City. He brought Zhong Yuan and the others to gallop down south. In just a day and a half, they arrived at the army at the border of Shijie City. They directly entered and took control of all the military power in Xi'an Province. The next few days were pretty much a legend. Just based on the 500,000 troops at the border along with the 300,000 subordinate troops gathered from the surroundings, they directly swept across the entire Huanlong province, completely flattening it. On the 5th day, they led 150,000 elite cavalry to head into Tianfeng province and Shiping province, where Taoyuan City's power was deeply rooted. 5 battles, 5 victories, crushing Taoyuan City and its vassal cities. Close to 3 million troops were all in a mess and broken into pieces. They also swept these 2 provinces close to 250 city countries, either forcing them to surrender or wiping them out. Wherever their troops pointed, no one could stop them. They were invincible. With their crazy attacks, they only used a mere 19 days to completely flatten the 3 provinces of Taoyuan City. Rimbo was originally prepared to head over to report the recent administrative matters, as well as the statistics of the Cloud Ocean hunt, as well as the split of the various races in the city. Their initial destination was a large city in Shiping province called Haiyu. When they set off, they received news that Zhongsho was leading troops to attack the last stronghold of Taoyuan City in Shiping province. In the end, after 2 days and 2 nights, they discovered that the place had already been conquered a day earlier, which meant that Zhongsho only used the 40,000 cavalry beside him, along with the 400,000 vassal city troops that he forcefully recruited along the way, or rather he forced them to join him to take down this famous city in the Cloud Continent. Moreover, it had only taken him 2 days to do so. He really didn't know how his ruler did it. When Rinbo asked around for the whereabouts of Zhongsho, he found out that Zhongsho had left in a hurry before Haiyu City fell. After leaving behind Chai Yuan and Ling Feikong to take charge, he turned and headed north in the direction of Xi'an Province. As a result, he took a big detour and ran for more than 10,000 miles in vain. However, in his heart, he didn't feel angry. Instead, he felt a little happy. Stepping on the land of another country and looking at the scattered soldiers of the various cities, he could only sigh in his heart. The ruler used a full year and a half to take down the 2 provinces of Tianfang and Shiping. After the ruler took over, he used just a few months to merge them into Gantian Mountain territory. The ruler had a successor. He felt really happy. After galloping for a moment, Rinwa's eyelids jumped. He saw that not far away, there were tens of people standing in the snow. They were all standing upright in the cold wind, like steel sculptures, not moving at all. Without needing to get close, Rinbo felt that the person at the front was really familiar. However, that aura was different from what he remembered. His body was straight like a spear, showing off his strength, filled with killing intent. Hu Zhongyuan? Rinbo was startled. In the past, he lived like a prince and was so casual. He looked mature, but when did this fellow who looked like a piece of gold on the outside become like this? Riding the horse forwards and standing still in front of Hu Zhong, Rinbo noticed that this fellow was really different. Valiant and tiger energy, no less than his father. Although there was an obvious look of exhaustion on his face, his back was still ramrod straight, and his tiger-like eyes were filled with sharpness. Looking at your situation, are you about to break through? Hu Zhongyuan chuckled, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. My old man always says that I'm useless, but Hu Zhongyuan, broke through to the Black Tortoise ancestor realm 7 years earlier than him. I just need 7 days to break through. If I follow the ruler and progress is slow, wouldn't I lose face for him? As he said that, Hu Zhongyuan thought about the important matter. The army leader is commanding the army and can't free himself. So he ordered me to fetch Prime Minister. Rinbo nodded slightly, galloping side by side with Hu Zhongyuan. They could hear the cheers of the army in the distance. They couldn't help but be curious. How is the situation there? We just finished gathering this morning. Now that the Prime Minister is here, we can watch a good show. Hu Zhongyuan was excited when he heard that. His brows raised as he explained, 2 days ago, after the ruler returned, he led the army to wipe out 10 rebel cities. This Shijia city is the last one. The ruler waited for 2 days and gathered 200,000 people here. He also invited all the city lords of the surrounding countries. Along with the subordinate troops, there are 600,000. As he said that, he was afraid that Rinbo would misunderstand and added, just Shijia, my Gantian mountain, can take it down with 30 to 50,000 people. However, the ruler said that he wants to use Shijia city to show his strength. What is it called? To kill the chicken to warn the monkey, to let those people who have second thoughts see the strength of our Gantian mountain, which is why we delayed until today. In this era, there was no such thing as killing the chicken to warn the monkey, which was why although Hu Zhongyuan was barely literate, he didn't understand this term. Rinbo smiled, knowing what Zhongsho meant. He knew that at the start, Zhongsho didn't care about all the rebel cities behind. Taking the chance that Yu Guanyin died and the people of Taoyuan City weren't calm, he led dozens of infantry and cavalry to attack Huanlong Province. However, as they progressed too quickly, the infantry couldn't keep up. In the end, when they entered the other 2 provinces, there were only 150,000 cavalry left, following which they split up to take down the cities. In the end, the 800,000 soldiers were scattered all over the 3 provinces. When Zhongsho returned, there were only 50 cavalry following him. The troops that took down the 10 rebel cities should be the hundreds of thousands of elites that followed the fleet to hunt under the Cloud Ocean. They pretty much rushed over without stopping, but in the end, they were only able to join in to clean up and vent their anger on those rebel cities. For Zhongsho to be able to gather 200,000 Gantian mountain soldiers in 2 days was already not easy. Just as he was thinking, the outline of a city appeared in his field of vision. Along with the galloping of the Wind Rider foal under him, it became clearer and clearer. It was a city that was 300 feet tall, 7 miles long, and 6 miles wide. The surroundings were covered in snow. Only this place had a scorching aura. Who knows how many spirit masters did it such that there wasn't a single piece of snow falling in this tens of miles of land. Based on what Hu Zhongyuan said, there were a full 600,000 infantry and cavalry surrounding this city known as Shijia City. Looking out, it was indeed a killing intent that charged into the heavens. Rows of armored soldiers lined up neatly on the plains surrounding the city. There were also many cavalry troops mixed within. Most of them were placed on the nearby hills. They seemed to have felt the aura of the formation descending. Those war horses all stepped on the ground uneasily, giving out neigh after neigh. Under the leadership of Hu Zhongyin, Rinbo passed through the barracks and arrived at the center of the army. He could feel that these Gantian mountain soldiers were different from before. Since Zhong Weiran died, their fighting spirit and sharpness that had slowly dissipated had totally returned. It was still that tiger-like, domineering, undefeatable Iron Army. This discovery surprised him even more than Zhongsho taking down 3 provinces. However, when he reached the front of the Central Army formation, Rinbo was furious. He saw a luxurious carriage pulled by 18 pure, white Wind Rider foals stopping on a hill. The decorations of the carriage were extremely luxurious. They were all made from top-quality purple dragon gold, and there were jewels all around. The white veil hanging on all sides was also really exquisite. It was made from 300-year silk. Not only could it keep one warm, but it could also block arrows. At this moment, Zhongsho was lying within. Beside him was Ruoshui and Chu Shui, who were like flowers in jade, sitting docilely beside Zhongsho. Incidentally, there was also a piece of bee skin on the soft couch. Rinbo's eyes were sharp, and he could see that this skin was taken from the body of a grade 7 beast on the cloud ships. At this moment, even he was a little jealous of this Zhongsho. Nice carriage and beauties, it really made one jealous. He originally wanted to scold him, but when he reached the side of the carriage, Rinbo gave out a bitter laugh. "Ruler, is this your way of promoting luxury to stimulate spending?" Zhongsho was originally staring at Shijia City. When he heard that, he smiled and signaled for Rinbo to get on the carriage. "This is called marketing. Didn't I open a blacksmith shop a while ago? I recruited tens of spirit blacksmiths, but in the end, they didn't craft any good weapons. Instead, they crafted such a carriage for me. Today, I can show off in front of them. In the future, it will be easy to sell such a carriage. Those fellows are probably worried about having nowhere to spend their money." Rinbo was startled, thinking to himself that this was the reason. That was a little interesting. However, in his heart, he still couldn't accept it. He knew that Zhongsho wouldn't listen to his advice. He was too lazy to speak as he boarded the luxurious carriage. The moment he stepped in, he felt that the carriage was a little different. Not only was it as warm as spring, but it could also calm the heart. His mind became calm and gentle in an instant. His brows furrowed as he looked closely at Zhongsho. "Is this carriage specially designed for spirit masters?" Zhongsho smiled and didn't reply. The spiritual formation within the carriage was indeed a classic design from 3,000 years later. It was enough for his new blacksmith shop to last for a period of time. He temporarily handed this shop over to Ruoshui and Lin Fan to manage. It didn't matter whether or not they earned money. As long as they could develop enough spirit blacksmiths, they wouldn't lose money. Rinbo was only slightly surprised before he didn't care. He turned around and looked at the row of people not far away from the carriage. They were the people that Zhongsho had gathered here, the rulers of the various cities and countries. Chapter 3:18. There were hundreds of people. Not only were they near Shijia City, but there were many who were forcefully brought over by Zhongsho from Huanlong and the other provinces. Their expressions were all different. Some were happy, Some were solemn, some were furious, some were respectful. Even their treatment was different. Some people sat under the neatly arranged warm tents with stoves around them. Some people could only stand alone in the snow. Rimbaud looked out, only to see that even further away, facing the city wall, there were rows of wooden pillars. Every 20 steps there would be one, and on it hung a corpse. There were 30,000 corpses, both male and female. Due to the cold weather, they were all frozen. Looking out, one felt a chill seep into one's heart. The most eye-catching person was Talion City Lord Yuguanyun at the front. As for the others, they should have come from those traitor cities. On the way, he had heard that unlike when Zhongshou attacked Huanlong, Tianfang, and Shiping provinces, he was merciful to those who surrendered or were forced to surrender. His methods towards those traitor cities were really cruel. He pretty much didn't accept anyone who surrendered. Below the city lord, including their trusted subordinates, were all killed. Even their families were nearly wiped out. Rimbaud couldn't bear to do that, but he knew that Zhongshou's actions weren't wrong. However, he sensitively noticed that most of the people on the wooden racks were above 16. Rimbaud smiled and retracted his gaze. The rulers treating these city lords a little too harshly? I remember that when the late ruler was here, although on the surface he treated them like brothers and wouldn't hurt their faces. However, in the dark, there was a difference between close and distant relationships. Those close to loyal subjects would be given more benefits. Rewards and punishments were clear. Naturally, one could pull them over and divide them. Is that so? Zhongshou instantly knew that as compared to Zhongweiran, his methods were inferior. However, he really didn't understand the way of the ruler. Although he had spent a period of time in the business world, he only had 2 or 3 people under him. Just as he saw the light of rising up, he was suppressed. However, Zhongshou didn't care. Anyways, he didn't care about these people. He did not have the time or energy to play such tricks. It was better to be more direct. He went straight to the point. Prime Minister, you came all the way here. Is there an outcome to the matter of Rainbow City? How is my harvest this time? Based on the 5% we agreed on, ruler's gains are 2 million grade 4 beast crystals. However, this doesn't include the beast crystals in the 2 Chinquan bags. Rimbaud didn't hesitate, passing over the few beast skins in his hand. This is the list, as well as the approximate number of beast crystals we should use. Based on what the ruler said, this is the budget. Before the fleet set sail that day, he had never imagined that the rewards from this cloud sea hunt would be so great. If he had known earlier, he would have suppressed it a little more. Zhongshou's lips twitched. This Rimbaud really wanted to take money from his pocket. He was really a treacherous minister. Prime Minister, why didn't you include the additional investment of the 800 elemental destroying crossbows that I bought on Psychic Island? Rimbaud smiled faintly and didn't answer. Zhongshou held his breath. Facing this old minister, this was the first time he felt like he had lost. He skipped past this matter and looked at the budget that Rimbaud made in his hand. The first thing that jumped into his eyes was the loan from him, which had been cut by a full 50%. The reason was that Gantian Mountain's current finances were enough to support it. Zhongshou's eyelids jumped. He resisted the urge to fire Rimbaud and continued to look, following which he said in deep thought. Prime Minister's budget is a little weird. Based on this calculation, most of the beast crystals and soul stones will fall into the hands of the cultivators and spirit masters in the city. Rimbaud bowed slightly when he heard that. That's right. I have thought about it. If too many beast crystals and soul stones enter the market, it will depreciate and cause the wealth of the people to shrink, which is why I have thought about it. It is best to use up these things as soon as possible. Zhongshou's eyes lit up. The anger from before instantly disappeared by 90%. In this era, there weren't many people who knew that too much currency would cause the wealth of the people to depreciate. Although he was unhappy with how stingy Rimbaud was, it could still be used. Looking carefully, that Taiging Hall was already half built. Very good, this is really desolate. Just as he said that, Zhongshou saw a group of cavalry galloping over. The one at the head was Zhong Yuan. He got off his horse and bowed. Ruler, that Xie Rong isn't willing to surrender. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed, showing a cold intent. Did I say that I would let them have children under 16? Seeing Zhong Yuan keep silent, Zhong Shou understood. He scoffed coldly. Since he wants to die with the city, then let's fulfill his wish. Push those elemental destroying crossbows out. Rimba's expression changed slightly as he looked at the front of the army, only to see hundreds of elemental destroying crossbows being pushed out, pointing towards Shijia City. Those 200,000 people cheered out. Rimba knew that Zhong Shou had been carrying the elemental destroying crossbows in his heaven and earth bag to follow the army to battle. However, he didn't use it many times to sweep 3 provinces and crush the army. Most of it was in the wilderness. The elemental destroying crossbows were inconvenient to fire and difficult to set up. The consumption was huge, so he didn't use it many times. It seemed like in the end, Zhong Shou was planning to use it here to threaten the other cities. However, when he thought about the 800 grade 6 beast crystals needed to be used up, it was close to a third of his previous income. Rimbaud felt his heart hurt. Ruler, although these elemental destroying crossbows are good, it consumes too much. It is best to use them less in the future. Zhong Shou glanced at him and then shook his head. I feel that the lives of my subjects are better than these dead things. Xie Rong is already prepared to die. There is no need to fight to the death with them. The moment he said that, the many guards around the carriage were all moved, their faces flushed red with excitement. They only felt that they were willing to follow such a master, even if they died in battle. Rimbaud was startled, following which he smiled in praise as he looked into the distance. In just a moment, those 800 elemental destroying crossbows entered the energy storing process. However, in the next moment, the city gates suddenly opened. With Xie Rong at the lead, a bunch of Shijia city generals walked out of the city gates with ashen white faces. Hu Zhongyuan laughed coldly, leading the cavalry to gallop over. In just a moment, he forcefully dragged them to kneel in front of the hill. Then, Chai Zhou rode his horse and held his axe in front of Xie Rong, asking coldly, "Do you remember what you said when we were on Psychic Island?" Xie Rong's face was green, and he didn't say a word. Chai Zhou wasn't annoyed. "You said that the ruler was young and useless and couldn't convince all of you. You also didn't believe that the ruler could bring all of you to hunt under the cloud ocean. This was why when you Guanyin summoned all of you, you had to go, to be able to join Taoyuan City. It was the fortune of your life." As he said that, Chai Zhou's face was filled with a cold smile. "Then what about now? Are you willing to say those words once more?" Xie Rong kept silent. As for what happened now, he didn't need to reply. Under the sea of clouds, 1,000 cloud ships were defeated and sunk into the sand. Gantian Mountain, which he didn't have high hopes for, returned with a full load. Even Yu Guanyin's body was split into 2, dying in a tragic manner. Out of the 4 provinces under him, only 1 was left, barely surviving. Actually, 20 days ago, he regretted it. If he knew that this would happen, why did he do what he did? At that time, he went through so much trouble to finally escape. Actually, he did have thoughts of giving up and wanted to abandon the city and flee. However, in the end, he was lucky and got the upper hand. When he noticed that the situation wasn't good, Zhong Shou swept into Huanlong 3 provinces. When he really wanted to flee, he had nowhere to go. Just as a sigh came out of his mouth, Xie Rong saw a bright axe light flashing. He instantly felt an ice-cold intent on his neck. In the next instant, his head was tossed high into the air. His vision rolled until he couldn't see anything. At this moment, Zhong Shou abandoned the luxurious carriage, riding a grade 4 war horse to the front of the hill, looking on as Xie Rong and the generals of Shijia City were beheaded one by one. Zhong Shou's eyelids trembled, turning around and looking at the various city lords behind him. Have you all seen the situation here clearly? At this moment, the people who were in the warm tent all walked out. No matter if it was new or old, they all stood respectfully in the cold and wet mud. Be it people who were shocked, respectful, unhappy, or afraid, they all held their breaths. In front of Zhong Shou, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. I am different from my father. Father treats all of you too well, like brothers in legs. Zhongshou doesn't have so much patience. Today, I will use the heavens as a witness to tell all of you. If any of your cities dare to have any thoughts of betrayal, Zhongshou will slaughter your city and wipe out your country. Before I say this, don't say that I didn't warn you. After he finished, he laughed. He didn't return to the carriage, riding his horse and leaving. He directly tossed aside the 200,000 Gantian mountain elites outside of the city and didn't bother about them. Only Zhong Yuan was able to form up a 20,000 cavalry army and chase after them. Dust and smoke rose into the air. Only after a long time did the hill regain its silence. Until Zhongshou and the elite cavalry left, there were no more Gantian mountain people on the hill. Only then did everyone raise their heads. First, they exchanged complicated glances with one another. Then, they all left in groups of 3 to 5, discussing along the way. Most of them were split into 2 groups. One was the city and country lords under Gantian Mountain. They were all really relaxed. Although they were shocked by the destruction of Shijia City and felt sad for it, they were all with Gantian Mountain. However, they were all connected to Gantian Mountain, so they didn't care much about it. Instead, they were happy about it. Song Huanlong, Tianfang, and Shiping provinces were another group. Their faces were slightly ashen white. A middle-aged man with a thin face was amongst them. He was around 7.5 feet tall, with a long sword by his waist and scholarly attire around him. There were many familiar people around who knew that he was Tianfang Province's Yuanlong City Lord Zidonglai. They all gathered around him. Zidonglai didn't bother about them, only looking in the direction that Zhongshou left in. Chapter 319. I really don't dare to believe that a person like City Lord you would die in the hands of this person for no reason. A child who hasn't matured, still full of baby energy. Child? The child you were talking about caused those 4,000 cloud ships to sink into the sand. Within 20 days, he swept several provinces. No one could stop him. Scoff. He can only be happy for a while. Just because he has some achievements, he is so arrogant. Even when his father was at his strongest, he was really thrifty. Even his carriage was an extremely ordinary cloud crossing carriage. Look at his extravagance and extravagance. Who knows how much of the people's blood and sweat were used? I only know that Serene died in a tragic manner. Taoyuan City lost 5 battles, all of which were head-on the battlefield. If they didn't surrender, they would most probably follow in Serene's footsteps. You and I are different from Huanlong Province. Those people who surrendered then rebelled then surrendered. It is normal that Zhongshou doesn't like them. Why do we have to join in? However, that carriage is really not bad. No matter if one is a spirit master or martial cultivator, cultivating in it is beneficial. What a waste. Probably in these few years, only the city lords under Gantian Mountain can afford it. This time, they have earned too much. You can't say it like that. One must be loyal. Moreover, this Zhongshou is so overbearing at such a young age. He probably won't last long. Loyal? If you talk about loyalty, then why don't you surrender without a fight? So what if he is overbearing at such a young age? As long as he can make the territory safe and give us some benefits every year, it is okay. As for whether or not it will last, let's see how many powers in Donglin Cloud Continent can go up against Gantian Mountain. Zidonglai smiled when he heard that, coming back to his senses from deep thought. Although he was a little absent-minded, he heard the words of the people beside him. He knew that most of these people were at odds with each other and had different opinions. Who knows what methods that Zhongshou used? He thought back to the agreement he signed when he met Zhongshou. He borrowed 50,000 grade 4 beast crystals from the Gantian Mountain Monster King. This time, Yuanlong City suffered a great loss. A total of 25 cloud ships were sunk. Not only did they gain nothing, but they also lost tens of thousands of elites. Just the compensation alone was an astronomical figure. With these beast crystals, they were finally able to solve their desperate situation. Although the interest was frighteningly high, it would allow Yuanlong City to quickly recover its vitality. It was better than gradually declining in the future. Naturally, there was a price to pay for this loan. Be careful with your words. No matter what, the person you're talking about is already our ruler, so how can we not respect him? West Border City only has itself to blame, and there is no need for us to grieve over the loss of the rabbit. No matter whether or not Gantian Mountain falls in the future, at least now we need to follow the official path. As soon as these words were spoken, the surrounding people fell silent. The dozen or so people here were all in the vicinity of Dragon Origin City, following his lead. Since Zedong had made such a decision, even if this person was dissatisfied, he had to suppress it in his heart. At this time, Zedong Lai was too lazy to care. He was deep in thought. What kind of person was this Zong Shou? If it was before, there would be people who dared to look down on him for not cultivating and not learning spells. However, at this moment, no one dared to look down on him. To be able to behead Yu Guanyun and force Taoyuan City to the brink of destruction, causing Gantian Mountain City to rise up once more in the west region of the Cloud Continent and become the overlord of a region. Such a person, even if he didn't have the strength to fight a chicken, it was enough to make one tremble in fear. This meeting had left a deep impression on him. His style had changed a lot. In the snow, a group of close to 20,000 cavalry were galloping. Tens of thousands of horse hooves were like lightning, causing the snow to fly up. Zong Shou also rode his horse forward, protected in the middle by the army. His face was filled with exhaustion. 20 days of galloping without stopping, riding the war horse, pretty much not stopping at all. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't tired. Just him alone had exhausted 3 grade 4 Windrider foals. At Shijia City, he finally had a rare 2 days of rest, following which he needed to gallop day and night. What a tough person. However, he had no choice as the East matter had already been solved. Blazing Flame City and Yunxia City had a possible huge battle which he needed to personally head over to take a look. As expected, the Monster King position wasn't for a human. In his heart, he was filled with regret. If it wasn't for Long Ruo and the others provoking him, he wouldn't have gone crazy. Within 20 days, he had taken down Huanlong, Tianfang, and Shiping provinces. Actually, within a few years, slowly eating and swallowing was the best method. If he swallowed like a whale sweeping up, he would have some indigestion. Coincidentally, at this moment, a red shadow descended from the sky. Hu Zhongyuan at the side reached out and grabbed the red swift bird in his hand. Zong Shoushi knew that this was definitely a message from Hu Qianxiu or Qiu Wei. He was lazy to take a look, directly asking, "Is it Uncle Hu or Uncle Qiu? What's the situation there?" Hu Zhongyuan took out the letter and took a look. His brows furrowed. "It's father." He said that Yunxia City's attacks are really strong, gathering 900,000 cavalry along with the lords of the subordinate cities. They have been attacking for 3 days and 3 nights near Gucrane City. However, at noon today, they have retreated and are showing signs of merging with Blazing Flame Mountain. They seem to know about the situation here. Zong Shou's lips curled up. As expected from Feng Nu and Xiongba, they were all war veterans, heroes of a region, understanding the situation. They suffered heavy losses in the Cloud Ocean and returned empty-handed. They knew that their forces were hurt and were really weak, but they went all out to attack to try to break the situation. After knowing that the 3 provinces of Tianfang were swept by him and that Taoyuan City had no way to fight back, they decisively retreated. They used troops and strength, not giving anyone a chance to take advantage of them. Following which he heard Hu Zhongyuan say, "My father said that although Yunxia City's attacks are strong, they are weak on the inside and their hearts aren't calm. He has 70% confidence that he can crush them in one strike." He blames the ruler for tying up his hands and feet such that he can only defend Gu Crane City and miss out on a good chance. Zong Shou laughed involuntarily. At the start when he sent down the numerous decrees, he had predicted that Hu Qianxiu would be unhappy. Write back to your father and say that if you use your fist to hit people, you need to clench your 5 fingers tightly and retract your hand. Only when you gather enough strength can you cause pain. If not, if it doesn't hurt or itch, what's the point? Yu Linghuan's talents aren't weaker than his father's, and can't be underestimated. We also can't be careless. Hu Qinshou nodded his head. He deeply agreed with Zhong Shou's last sentence. Although Yu Linghuan lost 5 times in front of their ruler, he was able to lose but not collapse. After knowing that things weren't going well, he retracted all his strength right away. He gathered the troops of Yuntao City in Hanxi Province and defended it tightly. It caused Zhong Shou's troops to be like a mouse pulling a turtle, helpless, and could only return. He had no choice but to leave Chai Yuanling and fake on behind. He also called Rinbua over to deal with these new lands to defend against Taoyuan City's counterattacks, which was why no one here, including Hu Zhongyin, dared to underestimate this person. Yu Linghuan's decisiveness in doing things was no less than his father. If anything happened on the West Line, this person would definitely make a move. After Zhong Shou finished speaking, he was slightly distracted. This trip to Gu Crane City might be the last battle he participated in these few years in Gantian Mountain. That Taiying Stone Hall was about to be built. After settling everything, he would be able to be at ease and place everything down to continue to chase his sword path. This king position seemed really important and had huge power, controlling the life and death of billions of people. However, it wasn't what Zhong Shou wanted. To complete that person's wishes, he had already wasted too much time. He closed his eyes and allowed the Wind Rider foal under him to gallop on its own. Zhong Shou's intent entered the underworld. After 20 consecutive days and nights, he had slowly learned how to enter a meditative state on a horse. At the start, it was to recover soul power. In the end, he could even cultivate in such a state. At this moment, what Zhong Shou paid the most attention to was the one origin sword that he was nurturing within his soul. This illusionary spirit sword was more and more golden in color, and there were dragon patterns wrapping around it. Actually, since he obtained all the riches of the beast tomb under the cloud ocean, he also used the energy-destroying crossbows to sink those 4,000 cloud ships. The aura of the Tao of Kings that was gathered on the body of the sword was the so-called aura of dragons. It was already growing. When he led his troops to invade south and expanded by 10,000 miles, the dragon energy within naturally became thicker and thicker. This was the sign of the country's strength increasing greatly, the military strength reaching its peak. However, to his surprise, the problem of contamination from the dragon energy that gave him a headache did not appear. These threads of bright yellow energy only gathered on the one origin sword, like it was blocked by a power, and it didn't spread outwards. He remembered what Wei Su said before he left. Zhong Shou instinctively focused all his attention on the 9-layer purple gold pagoda. If it was as he expected, the dragon energy was suppressed by the pagoda. It seemed like this item wasn't as simple as just suppressing the soul. His senior brother had indeed left him a huge gift. Zhong Shou still couldn't touch this magical treasure of unknown grade. He only took a close look and didn't bother about it. Instead, he continued to form true spiritual talismans in his soul ocean. When he was on the boat, he asked Xianyuan Irin for advice on the meaning of the purify word. He also studied the heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique. Using Little Gold's natural ability, he swallowed and purified several spiritual treasures. He was only a few steps away from these 2 true spiritual talismans. Maybe in 4 days, maybe in 10 days, in less than a month, his spiritual cultivation would be able to enter the return to Sun Realm. From the West World to Ancient Crane, the distance was a total of 2,200 miles. Luckily, the land was flat, and there was no need to take a detour. 1 man, 3 horses, traveling day and night, in just 2 days and 2 nights. Zhong Shou was on the horse, continuously forming true spiritual talismans, using them to comprehend laws and to observe where he was lacking. He didn't feel too tired along the way. On the morning of the 3rd day, the distant ancient Crane City was finally in sight. Zhong Shou felt slightly regretful and stopped his meditation. At this moment, within his soul ocean, there were only 2 true spiritual talismans that weren't completed. Chapter 320. When they arrived, only then did they know that the battle situation near Gu Crane City had changed. The Yunxia City army had retreated 500 miles out. They officially joined forces with Blazing Flame Mountain City and formed up at a place known as Huling Hill. Hu Qinxiu also gave up on defending, not hesitating to push hundreds of miles forward to the core of Waning Province. Along with Qiu Wei, they camped in front of Huling Hill. In a short 2 days, both sides had clashed dozens of times. Both sides had suffered 200,000 casualties. Both sides had wins and losses. Learning of this latest development, Hu Zhongyuan's expression changed slightly. Zhongshou summoned the few messengers that Hu Qinxiu sent back to Gu Crane City to ask about it. A moment later, he understood the battle situation in front of him. This Feng Nu is really a hero of an area. No wonder he could go up against people like Zhong Weiran for so many years and not fall. He can't be underestimated. Mobilizing all the troops to invade ancient Crane City was actually just a facade. Using the Battle of Gu Crane City as a cover, he made people silently build a high wall and numerous holes near Huling Hill. What was rare was that including Gantian Mountain, the scouts from all sides didn't notice anything. If it wasn't for Taoyuan City falling too quickly under his all-out attack, 3 provinces of land would be swept in just 20 days. Half of the 3 million soldiers under Taoyuan City were wiped out in the 5 consecutive battles. He was afraid that this person would succeed and complete the defensive line at Huling Hill. If that was the case, then even Feng Nu and Xiongba wouldn't be able to block their wave of attacks. They could also rely on this to cause Gantian Mountain City to bleed dry bit by bit. Seeing Hu Zhongyan still nervous, Zhongshou smiled. Don't worry, the general doesn't listen to the orders of the ruler. Uncle Hu decisively gave up on defense and turned to attack to stop Feng Nu from building this Huling Hill defensive line. If he follows my orders and watches Feng Nu succeed, I will scold him instead. Looking at these 10 over battles, they're all aiming at the vital points of Yunxia and Blazing Flame Mountain. No matter if we win or lose, we could disrupt their rhythm. Uncle Qiu, Uncle Hu, as expected of the famous generals who have been through hundreds of battles. His sharp senses told him how crafty Qiu Wei and Hu Qinxiu were. As for Blazing Flame Mountain City, it would at most interfere and prevent them from repairing the defensive line smoothly. As for the east front line that the Yunxia army was defending, they obviously put in 120% of their strength. Of the 200,000 casualties on both sides, close to 40% came from Yunxia. Hu Zhongyuan was stunned for a moment. Then he heaved a sigh of relief. What he feared the most was Zhongshou's reprimand. From the contempt of the past to the reverence of the present, he had unknowingly completed the transformation. There were no more battles near ancient Crane City. Zhongshou decided to stay here and rest for 2 more days. Only when the 20,000 elite cavalry under him had completely recovered did he leisurely gallop toward Huling Hill. It was as if he didn't care about the battle at all. Following him were 3,000 more elite cavalry. The leader was called He Li. Not only was he the city lord of ancient Crane City, he was also the clan leader of the Pill Crane clan, another huge clan under Gantian Mountain, who surrendered to Zhong Weiran 4 years ago. However, they were always roaming outside, helping Gantian Mountain to defend an area. What Healy was leading now was the most elite Pill Crane Cloud cavalry of their race. Light armored cavalry, able to travel 1,800 miles without stopping or resting. Due to their special mounts, they could fly over mountains and ridges. Their combat strength was a little higher than normal elite cavalry, and they were the most elite light cavalry of Gantian Mountain. This race often produced spirit masters who were good at medicine and poison. It was said that Zhong Weiran had fallen for their tricks before. Who knows how, but he totally subdued this Pill Crane race, making them willingly serve him. Along with the 3 million people in ancient Crane City, they became people under Gantian Mountain. Zhongshou was poisoned by this monster race player who came from the Pill Crane race in the God Emperor game, nearly causing him to die on the spot. One must know that at that time, he was famous for his sword. Even those top players on the same level as the seven emperors didn't cause him to be in such a bad state. This was why every time this Healy followed beside him, Zhongsho would feel his hair stand on end, and he would be wary and wary. Luckily, this Healy wasn't that old, only around 20 years old. He looked a little feminine, and when he spoke to everyone, he was always smiling. His voice was soft, and he didn't look like a dangerous person. Even if he had bad intentions, with his age, his poison path shouldn't be that strong. The so-called Huling Hill was a small hill that was only 10 miles wide, and the highest point was 1,000 feet. Both sides had millions of troops, so naturally, they couldn't all gather in one place. Feng Nu's Huling Hill defense line only used Huling Hill as a link to connect to the few medium-sized cities around. The entire battlefield stretched close to 130 miles. Millions of people were spread out in this region, facing one another and killing one another. When Zhongsho arrived, he first chose a high ground to observe the area. In just a moment, he knew why Feng Nu would choose this place where the terrain wasn't outstanding. On one side of this place was a huge mountain. On the other side was a huge river known as Pei River. This place was like a funnel, and at the tip was Huling Hill. It was indeed an important military area. Blocking this place was equivalent to blocking the vital throat of Waning Province. It could completely protect the several provinces behind it. Even Xiongba could use it as a wing to defend the nearby Xingda Province. Looking closely at the defense line that Feng Nu built, Zhongsho totally gave up on using the energy-destroying crossbows. It was obvious that Feng Nu had specially prepared for this. The million-strong army was spread out extremely widely. Even at the most concentrated area, there were only tens of thousands of people relying on the high walls to block, and also using cavalry to support. They were able to block Hu Qianqiu's attacks outside of this defense line. At this moment, although he was looking from afar, Zhongsho had a feeling. Those walls that were already built probably had spiritual formations to block the energy-destroying crossbows. Although the energy-destroying crossbow power was strong, it only had one attacking method. As long as one was prepared, it wasn't hard to deal with it. This was also why it was such a sharp weapon. In 10,000 years, there weren't many people who used it on the battlefield. Looking at it for a moment, Zhongsho closed his eyes and thought about it. Then he casually picked up a tree branch and drew in front of him. A moment later, the map of the entire Huling Hill battlefront appeared on the muddy ground. Zhong Yuan, Chai Zhou, Ling Xian, Hu Zhongyuan, and the others all looked on silently. Heli's phoenix eyes slanted as he looked on with interest. Then, Zhongsho pointed from a left and drew a thin line, pointing to the back of the Huling Hill battlefront. Zhong Yuan, can you lead these 20,000 elite cavalry to break in from here? I want you to lead them here within 10 hours. Zhong Yuan's brows furrowed as he bent down to take a look. Taking a look from the front and back, a look of understanding appeared on his face. Then he didn't ask, directly nodding his head, I understand. The eyes of the people around lit up. The few of them were all people who were well versed in military matters and intuitively noticed that this line was striking at the waist of Yinshao City. Their ruler was still as sharp as a few days ago when he swept the 3 provinces. This place was not only the weakest point of the Yinshao army. If they could break through from here, it would be a huge threat to the back of the Yinshao army. It was enough to force Feng Nu to give up this part of the defense line and retreat to regroup. If they didn't deal with it well, hundreds of thousands of soldiers would be buried here. Heli couldn't help but praise. This method was vicious and accurate. Then, he heard Zhongsho point 70 miles behind. City Lord He, I know that your Pill Crane Cloud Cavalry has always looked down on the Cloud Continent because of your speed. If I order you to go around the nearby mountains and sneak attack the city from the back, how confident are you? How much time do you need? Gushun City. Heli's eyes constricted, following which he asked curiously, apart from this place being wide and connected to all sides, there isn't anything worth paying attention to. Why does ruler care about this place? Zhongsho's brows instantly furrowed. During these 10 days, he had led the army to fight in the 3 provinces of Huanlong City. Hu Zhongyuan and the others didn't question his decisions anymore. Even an old general like Chai Yuan also bowed his head and listened to him. Heli's words made him feel a little unaccustomed. However, he didn't care much about it. He wasn't a domineering person who couldn't stand other people talking to him. He spoke out his deductions, and using the intelligence of the few people here, he could make up for what he missed out on. He directly pointed at the river. During these few days, be it Yunxia Mountain City or Blazing Flame Mountain City, they all used this river to transport resources. The grain is also piled up in the few cities beside the river and transported to the army. Guhan nodded his head. The situation was indeed as such. However, this didn't seem to have anything to do with Gushin City. However, I find something weird. That Feng knew and Xiongba knew that all their cloud ships were destroyed. Our 1,000 cloud ships have already returned safely, and in just a few days, we can enter the river. Why does he still dare to rely so heavily on this river? When they heard that, the people around were enlightened, their faces filled with excitement. Gua's eyes shone brightly. The fleet in the river is just a distraction. It might even be a trap to lure our navy over to attack. The true grain-gathering place of Yunxia City is in Gushin City. As he said that, Gua's thoughts became more and more scattered. Rulers sent Zhong Yuan to attack from here to distract and attract the Yunxia City troops nearby. So the true heavy blow is here. To be able to be so highly valued by the ruler, I am honored. Zhong Yuan and the others went over to bring all of you back safely. Zhong Shou's face was filled with praise. Anyways, within 20 hours, burn down this Gushin City. Gua didn't say anything, directly bowing. On the contrary, Hu Zhongyuan was a little curious. Then where is ruler prepared to go? Me? Zhong Shou smiled. Naturally, I'm going to find Feng Nu and Xiongba to negotiate. If I can avoid this battle, it's best if I don't. Chapter 3:21. In front of a full 170,000 elite soldiers, a giant yellow umbrella was held up high. Below it was a large carriage. It wasn't the type that Zhong Shou asked people to build, but it was taken over from nearby. However, it was still extravagantly decorated. However, in front of such a huge army, no matter how one looked at it, it didn't seem harmonious. About 40,000 feet in front of him, there was a 30 feet tall stone rampart. Who knows how thick it was, who knows how many soldiers there were. Only that it was filled with bows, making one feel a chill down their spine. Logically speaking, 40,000 feet should be within the range of those 8-arm and 10-arm crossbows. However, at this moment, Hu Qinxiu and Xiu Wei, several Xuanwu ancestor experts, were standing beside the umbrella. Therefore, no one thought that these ordinary crossbows could hurt the people under the umbrella. It was just a waste of arrows. Zhong Shou sat within the carriage, holding a piece of paper in his hand, looking at it solemnly. On it were many names, and this piece of paper came from Ruoshui. As expected, sighing slightly, Zhong Shou placed the piece of paper in his hand into his heaven and earth bag. In the entire Weining and Shungda provinces, the spies that Ruoshui placed were either wiped out or went missing. Some even joined the enemy. The scouts sent by Hu Zhongyuan's army also suffered heavy casualties. Just the number of martial ancestor realm experts who had died was as high as a few. With the strength of Yunxia and Blazing Flame families, it was tough to do that. Those few sects must have helped, which was why they were able to lock it down so tightly. They blocked off the news from Huling Hill and also affected the judgment of Hu Qianxiu and the others. After this matter, these people will be heavily compensated. When Ruoshui heard that, she immediately got off the soft couch, solemnly bowing towards Zhong Shou. Her expression was unusually silent. Zhong Shou gave out a self-mocking laugh. Zhong Weiron's opponents weren't simple at all. Feng Nu and Xiongba managed to turn the situation around. Xiu Wei, who was standing solemnly at the side, seemed to know what he was thinking. He turned his head and looked into the carriage. Ruler, you don't need to care. Deaths and injuries are nothing if you see too much of it. It's just normal. Such was the situation in troubled times. As for Xiongba and Feng Nu, they were indeed astute and wise. No wonder they were called ambitious and ruthless. However, compared to Ju and Shang, it wasn't much. In the end, the two of them still lost to the ruler. Zhongshou couldn't help but laugh. He wasn't someone who would feel sad over such a small number of casualties. It was just a sigh. It was really not easy to fight for the world. It was just a small area, but the two opponents were already so difficult to deal with. One could only imagine how powerful the other hegemons of the 5 continents and 12 islands were. Who knows how that God Emperor managed to unify the cloud world? It was better for him to focus on perfecting his sword Dao. Hu Qinxiu was getting impatient from waiting, slightly curious. Ruler, you said that Feng Nu and Xiongba would take the initiative to meet you, but until now, there is no sign of them. Are they trying to trick me? With their personalities, unless they are at their wits' end, they won't take the initiative to ask for peace. Uncle Hu, calm down. Wait a little longer. The moment Zhongshou said that, he stopped. He looked into the distance. Behind those stone ramparts, a group of people suddenly came out. The one at the front was Feng Nu. After a short while, another group of about 5,000 knights arrived in a grandiose manner. The one in front was exceptionally muscular. It was Xiongba. In just a moment, the two of them were walking side by side towards Zhongshou's carriage. They stopped roughly 20,000 feet in front, their expressions dark and cold as they looked over curiously. Zhongshou didn't speak, smiling as he looked on. In the end, it was Feng Nu who couldn't take it anymore and opened his mouth. Feng Nu came to meet City Lord Zhong to ask for peace. What does City Lord want before you are willing to stop the war? This war started because of you. What do you think I should do? Zhongshou stood up, sizing up the two of them. Last time when they met on Psychic Island, he only took a hurried look. It was only at this moment that his interest was piqued, and he began to observe carefully. In a future game, when the God Emperor era started, the two of them weren't in the world anymore. He had close to 10,000 years more knowledge than them. Undeniably, the two of them were really strong enemies. If he didn't destroy their cloud ships and fought them head-on, it would be hard to say who would win. Hu Qinxiu was stunned. This Feng Nu really swallowed the humiliation and really asked for peace. Moments later, a group of cavalry suddenly galloped over and whispered a few words in his ear. Hu Qinxiu instantly laughed out loud, his voice shaking the heavens. So Zhong Yuan had already arrived, just entering the battle, and his attacks were already so sharp. Feng Nu's face was dark and sunken as he swept him before focusing once more on Zhongshou. I want to use a huge sum to ask Ling Yun Mysterious Cloud Spirit Sect and the other sects to guarantee to give up Waning Province in exchange for 5 years of peace. Within 5 years, if we go against each other, the sects will work together to attack. Does City Lord Zhong agree? Xiongba frowned. His face was a little unhappy. However, he still opened his mouth. With Ling Yun's sect's guarantee, I can give up half of Shunde Province. Zhongshou didn't agree or disagree, asking Qiu Wei at the side. After my father went missing, what they swallowed were 3 provinces. Apart from Waning and Shunde, there was also Pingdao Province, right? Father spent so much effort to take down 3 provinces, but in the end, he gave it to others. Isn't that unfilial? Qiu Wei's eyes flashed. It was those 3 provinces. At that time, the ruler didn't return. That was because we were useless. It wasn't the ruler's fault. When Xiongba heard that, rage appeared in his eyes. His right hand holding the axe, he urged his horse forwards. You. You really want a foot when we give you an inch. I gave you face, but you don't want it. Do you really think I am afraid of you? Did he really think that he was invincible and invincible? If you want to take back those 3 provinces, I won't be able to. If we really fight, even if I lose, I will wipe out all your Gantian Mountain people. Qiu Wei's eyes instantly opened wide as he urged his horse forwards. He blocked in front of Zhongshou, coldly exchanging glances with Xiongba. Coincidentally, at this moment, a light suddenly charged down from the horizon. It landed in the middle of the 2 armies. When the light slowly dissipated, a green-robed teen appeared in front of everyone. I am Shan Xiaohan Yi Shuwei. Greetings to all of you. His voice was clear as it spread tens of miles of land. Han Nishue's eyes stared right at Zhong Shou. I am under orders from my master to represent the sects of Cloud Continent, to persuade the few of you to stop fighting. I also came to guarantee the contract. War is merciless. I hope that the three of you can take pity on the people here and stop this war as soon as possible. Zhong Shou was also sizing up this person. He had heard of this person's name many times, but this was the first time he had met him. He was indeed an amazing person. His cultivation had reached the day-wandering realm. His foundations were far thicker than spirit masters of the same grade, even no weaker than Long Ruo. Han Nishue and Zhong Shou didn't react at all, his eyes turning cold as he opened his mouth once more. I think that although Gantian Mountain is winning this time, however, Yunxiao and Blazing Flame City can still defend. Let me be the guarantor to let Feng Nu and Xiongba give up Weining and Shengde provinces to Gantian Mountain for 5 years. Is ruler willing to stop the battle on account of me? Han Nishue? Xiongba was obviously unwilling, wanting to speak, but stopping. In the end, he forcefully suppressed it. Zhong Shou kept silent for a moment. Just as Han Nishue was smiling, he finally opened his mouth, laughing coldly. On account of you? Who are you, Han Nishue? You dare to interfere in my Gantian Mountain War? The moment he said that, everyone was startled. They all looked at Zhong Shou in shock, their faces filled with disbelief. Even Hu Qinxiu and Qiu Wei were the same. Just now, they nearly thought that Zhong Shou was going to agree. Even Han Nishue's eyes constricted, not knowing how to react. Zhong Shou pulled out the lightning-winged sword from his waist, casually tossing it out, spinning and stabbing in front of Feng Nu and Xiongba. If the two of you want to stop the war, then spit out everything you ate from my Gantian Mountain. Each of you will give up half a province. I will give you 2 choices, either submit to my Gantian Mountain or break an arm to apologize. Choose. Xiongba was startled once more, following which he burst out laughing. I think you are crazy. Even Feng Nu looked at Zhong Shou with a mocking gaze. Could it be that this brat had really lost his mind? Their Yunxia Mountain had suffered huge losses this time, but they weren't at the end of the road. If they went all out, they still had the ability to protect their foundations. To actually want them to break an arm and submit to him, this Zhong Shou was really crazy. Han Nishue's eyes were ice cold as he looked coldly at Zhong Shou. I will remember this humiliation. I only advise the ruler not to go overboard. Zhong Shou didn't reply, expressionlessly looking into the distance. His eyes were filled with shock, following which he laughed. This heli speed was much faster than he had expected. Smoke is rising. City Lord Feng, aren't you going to turn around and take a look? Feng Nu didn't understand, turning around to look, only to see that in the southwest direction, a ball of thick smoke suddenly rose into the air. His expression changed. Gushan City? It is Gushan City. I order people to burn that place. Will City Lord Feng feel heart-pained? Zhong Shou nodded his head, asking Hu Qinxiu, Uncle Hu, how long do you think it will take for the navy of Governor Gu to enter Pei River? Hu Zhongyuan's face lit up, cupping his fists. I will rush them. It will probably take 2 days on the Cloud Continent. There was no magnetic repulsion. Cloud ships couldn't travel on land, but as long as the spiritual formation was slightly modified, those cloud ships could travel in the river. At this moment, Gantian Mountain could easily gather up thousands of cloud ships. They could lock down the entire Pei River, even cause the cities along the coast to change sides. Feng Nu's expression changed again and again. There was no trace of blood in his face. Xiongba seemed to know that things weren't good, his face turning green as he kept silent and didn't speak. After a long while, Feng Nu opened his mouth once more. I can give up all the land that I swallowed before. You want me, Feng Nu, to submit to you? Impossible. Chapter 322. Han Nishue's expression was so dark and sunken that water was about to drip out. Before he came, be it himself or the elders in the sect, they all thought that with the strength of Ling Yun's sect and mysterious Cloud Spirit sect, they would be able to suppress Zhong Shou and force him to take a step back. However, when he came, it was such a situation. This Zhongsho was actually so stubborn. What made him even more annoyed was that the two of them didn't live up to expectations. At such a crucial moment, such a change occurred. It's good that they aren't willing to submit. Zhongsho didn't care, sitting on the soft couch. His eyes looked calm, but there was a bit of rage gathering at the depths of his eyes. What he hated the most in his life was being threatened by others. Then there is another choice, to break your own arm. No, I changed my mind. Half a province isn't enough. How about the two of you spit out a province each? For Longza and Fuyao, the time limit will be reduced to 3 years. I will be able to answer to my subordinates. Before he finished, Xiongba's eyes opened wide in rage, saying solemnly, F*** your grandmother. Zhongsho, you are asking for a mile when we give you an inch. Do you really want to force us to fight to the death before you are willing to stop? At most, I, Xiongba, will perish together with you. When Zhongsho heard that, he wasn't angry, scoffing slightly. Uncle Chiu, tell this Xiongba, my Gantian mountain will flatten Taiyuan city and withdraw from the west. How many soldiers can we move? Chiu Wei smiled, his chin slightly raised. Not counting the support troops, there are 600,000 war elites. The subordinate cities have troops of our Gantian mountain cavalry standard. There should be 1 million of them. Only 600,000? That's too little. Zhongsho felt that it was too little, continuing to ask, where are the Xian Mountain City reinforcements? Ruler, Xian Mountain City's 540,000 troops are rushing over. This time the one who replied was Hu Qianxiu. His voice was majestic and filled with energy. With Xian Mountain City, General Hai Tianyuan personally leading, in 3 days they will cross Ruahai Straits. Then within this waning province, how many city and country lords are communicating with our Gantian mountain? Hu Qianxiu and Chiu Wei exchanged glances. They weren't able to grasp the exact numbers. 30 or 40. He only knew that even if the surrounding cities didn't change sides on the spot, most of them secretly dispatched envoys to leave a way out for themselves. However, should he really tell these two about this? Finally, it was Ruoshui who said softly, including Shunda province, there are 49 cities. Another 50 cities have already sent messengers to ancient Crane City. Only then did Zhongsho smile and look toward Xiongba. Your troops aren't as strong as mine, and you won't be able to defend this healing hill. Since that's the case, what qualifications do the two of you have to fight me to the death? What right do you have to die together with me? Xiongba, whose grandma are you trying to F***ck? How dare you? His voice was calm, but it seemed to be mixed with ancient ice. Every sentence was extremely heavy, smashing Xiongba's mind and causing him to be stunned. He wanted to open his mouth to retort several times, but he felt speechless. He knew what Chiu Wei and the others were talking about. Wasn't that why he thought about coming over and proactively making peace with Zhongsho? However, at that time, Gushan City was still there, and this Huling Hill defense line was still as stable as a rock. He was also filled with confidence to be able to block the attacks of Gantian Mountain for half a year here. In the next instance, he seemed to have thought about something. Xiongba looked towards Han Nishui with a lost and pleading gaze. The latter's brows furrowed slightly, suppressing the rage in his chest as he opened his mouth once more. Your Highness Zhongsho, where it is possible to let people off, why do you have to go overboard? This peace talk was agreed upon by the various sects of our cloud continent. City Lord Zhong, do you really want to be enemies with us? Zhongsho burst out into a laugh. If it was before, the threat was just hidden. However, at this moment, all the veil was ripped off, totally naked. Where it is possible to let people off, we should let them off. Huh. Then what did my Gantian Mountain spies do? What does it have to do with your sex? You all want to wipe them all out? Seeing Han Nishui hold his breath, Zhongsho's words were like knives as they sliced over. Even if you all use such underhanded methods to make my Gantian Mountain take a step back, are you even worthy? Han Nishui only felt that the vital energy in his body was flowing backwards, throbbing with pain. At this moment, he could only forcefully suppress it, raising his hands and bowing. Your Highness misunderstood. My mysterious cloud spirit sect didn't participate in this matter. Didn't participate? That means you silently agreed. Speaking of which, who cares if you all participated or not? I've already decided. What can you do to me? Zhongshou laughed coldly. Actually, he was the most unreasonable person in the world. The so-called meeting of the sects probably doesn't include the demon sect, Confucian faction, Buddhist faction, and also doesn't include the Kinzo sect Song Xingdao. Right? Oh, I can't be unreasonable. I have to use virtue to win you over. How about this? As long as you call out the person who killed my men, I will take half a province less. That is fair enough. Han Nishui's face was as red as blood, but at this moment he couldn't make any sound. The vital energy in his body was flowing backwards, becoming stronger and stronger. A depression was like a hard brick blocking his chest. Chu Shui and Ruo Shui looked at their master in a different light. They didn't expect that when Zhongshou got angry, his mouth would be so sharp. He was really vicious and direct at his weakness. Most importantly, your sects already see me, Zhongshou, as an enemy. Psychic Island even didn't mind breaking their own laws because of this. Why do you have to think that I will give you face? Do you really think you are putting gold on your face? If you don't use your ascended realm, how much strength do you have to interfere in this battle? Aren't you overestimating yourself? As he said that, the rage in Zhongshou's chest calmed down slightly, so people like you scram as far away as you can. Don't be an eyesore here. If you have any methods, just use them. I will receive them. I really want to see what tricks you all can play. Han Nishui was startled, looking at Zhongshou in a daze. It shouldn't be like this. Didn't they force such a strong person like Zhong Weiran to flee into the Oblivion Cloud Ocean? Why was this Zhongshou not only not forced to submit, but instead caused Gantian Mountain's strength to increase, causing him, Han Nishui, and mysterious cloud spirit sect to lose all their face? Then he suddenly understood that Zhong Weiran had the weakness of having already advanced to the Ascended Realm. However, this Zhongshou was not only as smart as his father, but till date he still hadn't found his true weakness. His emotions slowly calmed down, but the stuffy feeling in his chest didn't decrease, instead it increased. His brows tightly furrowed as he entered deep thought. Numerous calculations, thinking about it, but he was still unable to find a way to break the situation. He couldn't even find a single chip that could force Zhongshou to give in. Feng Nu looked on silently. After a long while, he reached out with his hand, taking the lightning-winged sword. He looked at Zhongshou. Let's agree on 3 years. My Yunxia Mountain will only give up half a province. After he said that, the long sword slashed towards his left arm. With a long sword landed, blood spurted, and a broken arm fell to the ground. Then, he directly tossed the sword aside, turning around and not even turning his head to leave. Xiongba's face was alternating between green and white. Then, he grabbed the lightning-winged sword that was already dyed in blood. Blazing Flame Mountain will also give up half a province of Fuyao. The sword light rose up, and that strong left arm instantly broke out from his body. Following which, Xiongba tossed the sword, and with a duo sound, it pinned onto Zhongshou's carriage, shaking nonstop. This time, I, Xiongba, have lost. I admit defeat, and I don't have the face to take up the position of Blazing Flame Mountain City Lord. 3 years later, your Highness's opponent won't be me. My Yuer will definitely make you Zhongshou die without a burial place. After he said that, Xiongba wasn't willing to stay any longer. He whipped his horse, leading the 5,000 Blazing Flame Mountain Iron Cavalry to gallop away, bringing with them a cloud of dust. Zhongshou's brows furrowed. Yue? That Princess Xianyu, who was made the heir of Blazing Flame Mountain? Interesting. In the next moment, he turned his eyes towards Han Nishui. At this moment, not only did Feng Nu and Xiongba leave, even the Yunxia Mountain soldiers on the stone rampart in the distance were rapidly retreating. In front of the 170,000 troops, only this person stood alone 10,000 feet away. Han Nishui's face was really ugly. Feng Nu and Xiongba didn't wait for him to make a decision before they cut off their arms. It was like two slaps viciously landing on his face. Without a doubt, he had thought it through. Even with the help of the Cloud Continent's sex, he wouldn't be able to turn the situation around. Why not cut off one of his arms before Zhong Shou raised even harsher conditions? Consecutively taking in a few deep breaths, Han Nishui was still unable to calm himself down. In the end, he looked coldly at Zhong Shou. "Your Highness has good methods. I will remember this humiliation in my heart, and the mysterious Cloud Spirit sect won't forget about it. Your Highness, please take care of yourself." After he finished, he waved his sleeves. "You are really unreasonable." He rose up on his sword once more, bringing with him a ball of light as he rose into the sky. However, just as he charged up 100 feet, he heard Zhong Shou speak once more. "I will have to trouble you to pass a message to those people. This grievance, Zhong Shou, will make all of you pay for it. Didn't you all set your eyes on the Dragon Canyon? If all the sects that participated in this matter don't hand over the culprits, Zhong Shou, will make sure you all don't even dare to think about touching a single Dragon Canyon." Han Nishui's speed paused slightly before he sped up once more. In just a moment, he disappeared into the horizon. Hu Qinqiu laughed out. "Following the ruler feels even better than when the previous ruler was here. These large sects are used to ordering people around. They really think that Argantian Mountain has to give them face." Qiuwei nodded his head slightly. "That should be the case. Anyways, whether or not they turn on us, those Donglin sects won't sit still and watch Argantian Mountain become stronger. With that, we have less to worry about." The surrounding Xuanwu ancestors all exchanged glances with one another and smiled. Such scenes of shrines and spiritual houses being humiliated were rare. Zhong Shou himself felt really carefree. The internal qi and soul power in his body seemed to be affected by this and became unusually active. Suddenly, his heart moved slightly. He sunk his thoughts into his soul ocean to try to form those few true spiritual charms. This time it was really quick. In just a moment, he completed it. Then, that whirlpool soul ocean started to spin intensely. As expected, the hundreds of true spiritual talismans started to form on their own. However, this time they were at the center of the whirlpool and not above it. When the swallow and purify talismans slowly formed, they seemed to have become the center of the whirlpool. Zhong Shou also comprehended something and knew that he had stepped into the 6th stage of the return to Sun Realm. Chapter 323. Cloud Saint's City. Within the reading room of the city Lord's Manor, a piece of cloud-patterned snow paper was spread out on the table. Su Jingyuan's body was slightly bent, using his left hand to hold a brush, splashing ink as he focused on writing. A moment later, a huge endure word appeared on the paper. When this word was completed, Su Jingyuan was delighted as he looked at his left arm. Strength seeping through the back of the paper, it was completed in one breath, not trembling at all. It seemed like this hand had totally recovered and there were no more hidden problems. Half a year ago, he had stepped into the Xuanwu ancestor realm. This also meant that not only had he recovered his strength, but he had also reached a new level. Since the withering sword energy in his arm was chased out, during these days, his cultivation had increased. Like it was compensating for these 10 over years of emptiness, it improved by leaps and bounds, close to explosive growth. 7 meridians were already there, 8 meridians weren't far away. Just as he was deep in thought, the door to the reading room was suddenly pushed open. The manager of the manor, Lianqing, strode in. Like something had happened just now. His face was filled with a weird expression. Su Jingyuan turned around, feeling slightly surprised. Looking closely at his expression, the glow in his eyes exploded. Is there an outcome to the battle over at Gantian Mountain? He thought to himself that it was really quick. He originally thought that Zhong Shou would need at least a month to deal with Xiongba and Feng Nu. These two people weren't easy to deal with. If one of them didn't handle it well, there was even a chance that the other party could turn the situation around. That's right. After Lianqing walked close, he bowed and looked at the words on the table. He only felt that the endure word was like a sharp knife stabbing right into his heart. His brows furrowed slightly before he instantly calmed down. After His Highness crushed Yuntao City, he only led 20,000 elite cavalry to Huling Hill. He sent Zhong Yuan and Heli to lead the elite cavalry to charge behind the enemy and burn down Gushan City. I heard that that place was where Yunxia Mountain City truly stored grain. Su Jingyuan didn't understand at first, but when he heard the last sentence, his eyes lit up. His Highness really has sharp eyes. Using the Pei River Channel as bait to ambush the Gantian Mountain Navy. That Feng Nu also lives up to his name. If it was other people, they would have fallen for it. That's right. After investigating, I found out that Yunxia and Blazing Flame had 200 energy-destroying crossbows on both sides of the river. Lian Cheng also sighed. Both sides had exchanged a few blows, but it was somewhat dazzling. He also broke out in a cold sweat for Zhongsho, as well as the Gantian Mountain situation. At noon that day, the three cities made peace at Huling Hill. Feng Nu and Xiongba were forced to sign the treaty. Gantian Mountain regained the land they lost a few months ago, forcing Yunxia and Blazing Flame City to each give up half a province of land. The current Gantian Mountain already occupied 12 provinces. Not only have they recovered, but they're also far stronger than when Zhong Weiran was here. As he spoke to this point, Lianqing's face revealed a look of fascination. Looking at His Highness's numerous victories, when he broke into the 3 provinces of the Huanlong Empire, he was as fast as lightning, not giving Taoyuan City any time to react. In the Battle of Huling Hill, he had attacked the crucial point again. Everyone said that Zhong Yuan was an unparalleled general. However, in my eyes, in terms of using troops, this purple lightning spear is far from His Highness. Su Jingyuan broke out into a laugh. Other people didn't believe that Zhong Shou had such ability. They would push all the credit to his men. However, the two of them were clear that His Highness was the teen hero who hid his true strength. Following which his expression turned serious, only to hear Lianqing continue. At that time, mysterious cloud spirit sect Han Yishui was also there. I heard that he represented the various sects to mediate the battle. In the end, His Highness didn't give him any face at all. Not only did he not care, but he also insulted him, causing him to lose all face. He directly forced Feng Nu and Xiongba to cut off their arms as an apology. Mysterious cloud spirit sect, Han Yishui, Su Jingyuan muttered, following which he tossed aside the brush in his hand, laughing maniacally. What a good His Highness! I didn't misjudge him. This news should be spread all over the world. With His Highness's ability and the strength of Gantian Mountain. Apart from using underhanded methods, what can these sects do to him? He shook his head. I originally thought that His Highness might need to borrow the strength of Tsang Shengdao to solve the problem. Who knew that His Highness was so talented? In just a few battles, he caused the various sects to be unable to do anything. After this battle, His Highness has taken over 12 provinces, 25% of Donglin Cloud Continent. It wouldn't be a problem for him to establish a country and call himself king. That Long Ruo and the others only think that His Highness is easy to bully. I am looking forward more and more to the day when they find out that the person they look down on is Tsang Shengdao's direct disciple. His Highness's talent is something that no one in the same generation in Donglin Cloud Continent can compare to. Lianqing was slightly worried. However, during this period of time, looking at His Highness's personality and actions, he doesn't seem like someone who is ambitious and craves power. Maybe His Highness's ambition isn't there. Su Jingyuan's eyes squinted, thinking back to the news that spread over from Gantian Mountain. Apart from those government decrees that made one's eyes light up, Zhongsho pretty much didn't bother about administrative matters. Everything was left to his subordinates to manage, and he didn't promote many people he trusted. It didn't seem like something an ambitious ruler would do. That Cloud Ocean hunt, as well as using troops this time, gave off a weird feeling. It was too rushed. It was like he was in a hurry to solve everything so that he could totally let go of Gantian Mountain. It's okay. Thinking about that, Su Jingyuan smiled and didn't mind. With His Highness's personality, if Gantian Mountain is in danger, he won't sit still and not do anything. Since he has already succeeded the Monster King position, he has no choice. As he said that, he paused. So on my side, it's time to make a move. Lianxing's brows furrowed, following which he wanted to say something but stopped. He wanted to persuade him, but didn't know where to start. There's no need to worry, I know what I'm doing. Su Jingyuan knew what he meant, smiling as he asked, do you know why the sects know that Gantian Mountain is rising up? Even if they build a dynasty, it won't do them much harm? Why do they still want to go all out to suppress it? Following which, without waiting for Lianxing to speak, Su Jingyuan picked up his brush once more. It is because of personal interests. To the sects, there's no loss. However, these sect disciples all have their own families and their own interests. How can they allow others to occupy them? So I was too naive at the start. The same mistake, how would I, Su Jingyuan, make the same mistake twice? Lianxing kept silent, since the city lord had made up his mind. Then no matter how he tried to persuade him, it was useless. Actually, in his heart, he was looking forward to it. Within the cloud ocean, on a lone reef above the cloud ocean, Long Rua's hand reached out and grabbed a red swift bird beside him. From the bamboo tube, wrapped around his leg, he took out a roll of silk. In just a moment, Long Rua's eyes were extremely dark and gloomy. Zhongsho, softly spitting out this word, Long Rua's eyes were complicated and indescribable. Thinking about it deeply, this person didn't do anything wrong to him, but during these few months, this name seemed to have become his nightmare, unable to get rid of it. Even like that, he was unable to do anything to this kid. Not only was he unable to kill him, but he also made this Zhong show more and more arrogant. Tianfeng and Shiping Province's won 5 battles. He even took the initiative in the Huling Hill battle. This Zhong show was actually so sharp when using troops. At the start, he had really underestimated him. The current situation was like a fishbone stuck in his throat, and he had to spit it out. He also had a sense of urgency. If this continued, even if he wanted to suppress him in the future, he might not be able to do so. Taking in a deep breath, Long Rua casually tossed the item in his hand into the cloud ocean. Then he was in deep thought. Moments later, he heard a hearty laugh ring out behind him. Senior Brother Long is so focused. Are you worried about the Dragon Gate matter? Long Rua was shocked, looking back. So, it is Junior Brother Zhu. The person behind him was Zhu Rinquang. He couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. I'm a little worried. After all, the Dragon Gate image was left by a Martial Path Saint. Who knows how much I can comprehend, which is why I am worried. Zhu Rinquang was slightly startled. In the past, the impression Long Rua gave him was that he was confident and calm. Logically speaking, he shouldn't be like this. However, he didn't think much about it, consoling him. Spiritual cultivation and martial path. In the future, they will all return to the same place. Saint Realm experts are already close to this realm. Senior Brother Long this time. You will definitely gain something. Following which he smiled. Master said that we can set off 12 days later. Oh right, there's also a pair of juniors along with us, Yin Feibai and Gohanyan. Senior Brother Long has heard of these two people? Long Rua nodded his head slightly. These two people, one entered the sect for less than a year and entered the peak of martial ancestor. The other reached the night, wandering 6 talisman realm. It was said that not long after entering the sect, they attacked and broke the Sky Sword platform and Heaven Talisman platform in the Cloud Palace, becoming direct disciples of the sect. The 4 generations of the sect were all top talents in the entire sect. How could he not have heard of such people? Following which he thought back to Zhongsho. Although that Yin Feibai and Gu Hanyun were not bad. However, to be able to break both platforms at the bodily chakra realm, Zhongsho was the only one in the sect in the past 10,000 years. Alright, there's one more thing that is really weird. Zhu Rinquang suddenly smiled. This time, there's one more person heading to the Dragon Gate. Senior Brother, You definitely won't guess who that person is. It is that Zhong who obtained the right to enter from the outer sect. He didn't know who reported his name. I heard that your master and I were also shocked. He has a dual meridian body and has barriers from heaven. Who knows what he is going to do there? Long Rua's eyes instantly constricted. The glow was shocking. In the next 2 days, in the center of a large piece of land, there was a strange scene. 120 miles of giant city center, within the most luxurious palace. An old man wearing a bright yellow dragon robe suddenly raised his white brows and looked at the report in his hand. Gantian Mountain, 6 battles, 6 victories, conquering 7 provinces. Interesting, the old man said as he picked up the report and looked at it carefully. A moment later he said with interest, this Gantian Mountain young master actually has no strength to fight back. Who would have thought that there would be such a young hero in this desolate land? Chapter 324. Across from the old man in the royal robe sat another person. He was around 30 years old, and even though he was in the royal palace, he was still covered in heavy armor. His face was handsome, and he had a long beard and chest. He looked very dignified. I know about this kid. I heard that he is only 14, and his scheming is no less than his father. I thought that after Zhong Weiran died, Gantian Mountain should have fallen. Who knew that this kid would shock the world and be so strong in Donglin Cloud Continent? I have studied how he uses troops, and there isn't anything special about it. There are only 2 points. One is that he is experienced, and the other is that he is swift. He often strikes at the vital points, hitting the enemy 3 inches away, catching them off guard. He doesn't look like someone who has just grasped troops, but like someone who has been through hundreds of battles. Oh, the Grand Commandant's evaluation of this kid is so high. The white brows of the emperor-robed old man moved slightly, and then he sighed. 12 provinces, which is 10,000 miles north and south. This Gantian Mountain can barely establish a country system. Even unifying Donglin Cloud Continent in the future might be possible. The old man suddenly stood up and walked to the bookshelf at the side. First, he took out a scroll from the 34th column of the Alayer, only to see that on the cover, there were the words Gantian Mountain Zone Weiran. The emperor-robed old man then used a brush to write the name Zhongsho after Zone Weiran. Then, after thinking for a while, he added the words, a fearsome young man at the end. 14 years old? I remember that when I was 14, I only knew how to play with birds and dogs, doing nothing. This Zhongsho has already broken millions of troops on the battlefield. If I could give birth to such a child, why would I need to worry every day? Worried about the God Emperor change. Mocking himself, the old man once again moved the scroll forward, placing it before the 24th column. Looking at the wooden shelf, his gaze was calm. The strong enemy hasn't gone, and there are new enemies. I don't know if I should be depressed or excited. The body of the middle-aged man who was called the Grand Commandant shook slightly before he regained his composure. The emperor being like that was something he was used to these few years. At the same time, tens of thousands of miles away in Donglin Cloud Continent, there was also a person standing on the city wall, carving Zhongsho's name onto the wall. This person was about 20 years old and had a broad forehead. His facial features were strange, but not ugly. Instead, he had a unique temperament. Several people followed him as he patrolled the city walls. At this moment, they were all standing quietly behind the young man. Gantian Mountain, Zhongsho. After the young man finished the last stroke, he remained silent. His face was dark and sunken as he looked towards the city behind him. This was a city that wasn't any weaker than Gantian Mountain and might even be better. The streets were bustling with activity, and the crowds were densely packed. However, the young man was absent-minded. His mind was filled with the words Zhongsho. 6 battles, 6 victories. Even Xiongba and Feng knew, such formidable characters, were defeated so cleanly. In the end, all of his worries turned into a smile. That's good too. Wouldn't it be a pity if there were no opponents in life? Within Gantian Mountain City, it was a totally different scene. On the day that the frontline battle reports were sent back, all the streets were decorated with lanterns and banners. Almost all of the people in the city were dressed in red and green, and they were dressed up in a festive manner. On the morning of the third day, numerous people gathered at the east city gate, surrounding this region such that not even a drop of water could seep through. Hu Zhongyuan led 20,000 iron cavalry and arrived. He was ordered to maintain order along with the East City Army lieutenant. When he saw the situation at the city gate, he was shocked. Even when Zhong Weiran was still alive, this Gantian mountain wasn't so bustling. He couldn't help but respect his old man's foresight more and more. If they waited for the ruler's carriage to return, they wouldn't be able to move a single step. He didn't hold back, ordering the tens of thousands of East City Army men to wave their sticks and forcefully split the crowd to two sides. At this moment, he had already broken through to the martial ancestor level and became a Xuanwu ancestor. After his face turned serious, his aura was really terrifying, along with the fact that he had killed so many people on the battlefield. His entire body was filled with killing intent. Scolding loudly, his aura was really strong. Normal people wouldn't be able to take it even if they looked straight at him. If they didn't listen, he would viciously smack them with his stick. In just a moment, he either scolded or hit them, clearing out a path towards the center of the city. However, the surrounding people weren't annoyed. Most of them were still really excited, their expressions pumped up. Hu Zhongyuan held the Tiger King knife in one hand, his body standing perfectly straight at the city gate. Along with those East City defending generals, he waited solemnly and respectfully. He didn't bother about those noises. Moments later, his ears perked up as he listened carefully. Don't tell me you're bluffing? That Yun Xiaofeng knew. Blazing Flame Xiongba, what kind of people are they? The previous ruler couldn't even settle them in so many years. How could they lose so quickly? They even each gave up half a province of land? In the past, there were some rumors in the city. 90% of them were fake, and some were true. Scoff. How could such an upright battle report be falsified? If it is exposed in the future, wouldn't it be embarrassing? Although that Feng Nu and Xiongba were both lords of a generation, even that Yu Guanyun died in the hands of our ruler. What is so surprising about those two losing to the ruler? That's right. Since the ruler went missing close to a year ago, only today is the most exhilarating day for us. Not only did we recover old land, but we also expanded it by 10,000 miles. As expected from the son of the previous ruler. Those blazing flame Yunxia and Taoyuan city people, how arrogant were they a few days ago? Now those merchants in the city don't even dare to breathe loudly. How satisfying. I heard that the ruler won 6 battles, forcing the Xiongba and Feng Nu to cut off their arms to ask for peace. Is that true? The ruler is so valiant. Hey, who said that Zhongshi could take over the position of the Monster King? I think that person can't even compare to a single finger of the ruler. Why mention a despicable person who went against the ruler? Only those so-called direct bloodlines of his own family would treat him as a treasure. That's right. Speaking of which, our Gantian mountain has a few rising stars. Zhongyuan, Heli, Hu Zhongyuan, Ling Xian, Chai Zhou. Hu Zhongyuan originally listened attentively. At this moment, when he heard these people talk about him, he couldn't help but listen attentively, laughing to himself. That purple lightning spear Zhongyuan is indeed an unparalleled general seed. He led the troops several times to charge at the enemy formations and won all of them, continuously breaking their formations. This heli burned down that Gushan city. I heard that he was the key person who forced Xiongba and Feng Nu to cut off their arms. However, this Hu Zhongyuan doesn't live up to his name. That fellow doesn't seem to have any achievements. Kiki, you don't know that although this Hu Zhongyuan isn't as good as the purple lightning spear, he is still a fierce general. He split out 40,000 elite cavalry in Dongping province and took down 12 cities, killing no less than 100,000 along the way. I heard that not long ago he broke through to the Xuanwu realm, and in the future he will become a famous general. Speaking of Argantian Mountain, the older generation people are strong. However, The younger generation is better than the older generation, no weaker than his father. Argantian Mountain will prosper. His right hand tightly gripping the Tiger King knife. Hu Zhongyuan was first furious. It was okay if he wasn't as good as Zhongyuan. Why was even Heli stronger than him? At most, this person was just luckier than him. A moment later, he once again smiled reservedly. Hearing other people talk about his glorious achievements, it made one feel comfortable. You are overpraising me, overpraising me. I don't dare to accept it. How can I be so shameless? Unfortunately, the discussions behind him went off the rails. A few days ago, my brother borrowed a lot of beast crystals from the bank. He said that he wanted to buy pills to break through to the mythic master realm. How can that be? So much money. How can he pay it back in the future? What are you afraid of? The interest isn't high. It is also because the ruler is kind and knows that the poor people can't afford to buy pills that can help one break through the meridians, which is why he did that. If one can't break through, it will be tough. However, once one becomes a mythic master, it will be really useful in the future. Don't you see that the disciples of the surrounding cities are so envious? Recently, they have been fighting so hard to enter our Argantian Mountain household. Hey, how can it be so easy to enter? Actually, I am more concerned about the bank to raise the old. Investing money now can help in the future. I wonder if it's true. It is most likely true. I heard that there are some handicapped people in the city who have started to get their monthly allowance from a bank. Prime Minister Rin also directly sent numerous beast crystals over. Argantian Mountain has money now, so why would we do such an untrustworthy thing? The old are taken care of. The ruler's actions are really virtuous. Unfortunately, the brothels in Shirley Ling Xiangding were all forcefully closed by the ruler. On such a joyous day, one can't even go to drink and visit prostitutes. One has to go to the Acropolis 20 miles away. How inconvenient. Again and again, it was all about borrowing money to cultivate and also the retirement bank. It made Hu Zhongyuan, who only wanted to hear others talk about him, feel really bored. Speaking of Shirley Ling Xiangding, he also felt a little sad. The ruler was good at everything, but moving all the brothels out of the city was the worst thing since Gantian Mountain was built. It was pretty much inhumane. It also caused Hu Zhongyuan's reputation to be totally ruined among those drinking brothers. Recently, he was like a rat crossing the street, not daring to show his face in front of these people. However, he never dared to say such words in front of Zhong Shou. He also heard some rumors that the reason why Zhong Shou was so furious was because of what he said one night. Taking the initiative to find Zhong Shou to persuade him about this matter, wasn't he asking to die? Just as his thoughts were running wild, the sound of horse hooves suddenly spread out by his ear. It was like a huge army was galloping towards the city gates. The one at the front was Zhongyuan. He was wearing red blood armor, holding the purple lightning spear in his hand. He still had that 10,000-year Ice Mountain face. Since he found out about his identity, this fellow was like that, not smiling at all, like he had a huge grudge against others. Behind him were close to 10,000 elite cavalry, chosen from the huge army. The cavalry, even if they weren't strong, they were at least battle-hardened. They were all the elites of the elites, protecting a large carriage in the middle as they slowly drove into the city gates. Hu Zhongyuan's brows furrowed before he was able to bow. Behind him, numerous people all knelt down, hundreds of thousands of voices gathered into one. Gantian Mountain people welcomed the ruler back to the city. Chapter 325. These are star tattoos. After Zhong Zheng exclaimed, he directly waved his sleeves, and a ball of pure spiritual energy charged over, trying to break apart the illusionary technique around Zhong Shou. Zhong Shou was originally trying his best to defend, his hands forming seals and his mouth chanting incantations. However, in terms of spirit master fighting methods, he was thousands of miles away from Zhong Zheng. In just a moment, the illusionary technique showed signs of being broken apart. Zhong Shou was helpless and could only change his talisman technique, summoning a cloud 200 feet around him to block the vision of the people around. Following which the fox ears and foxtail appeared in front of everyone. He sighed in his heart. As expected, his illusionary technique wasn't good enough. Zhong originally only saw star tattoos flash on Zhongsho's body. However, when he swept the spiritual energy over, he was startled. This Zhongsho's spiritual cultivation had reached the return to Sun Realm. A 14-year-old return to Sun Spirit Master. However, at this moment, what he paid more attention to was Zhongsho's body. Sky Fox monster body. Your half-monster body actually awakened a monster body. It's actually 5-tail star tattoos. First, he was extremely surprised. Following which Zhong seemed to have realized something. His expression sunk once more. Since you have awakened your monster body, then why do you need to hide and hide? The so-called star tattoos are the proof of the emperor of our fox race, the purest bloodline of the sky fox race. You are born to lead the 10 races of our fox race, the true direct bloodline of our fox race. Zhongsho was speechless. Didn't need to wear these fox ears and drag a few tails around to show off. Looking at the expressions of the people around, be it Rinbo or Hu Qinxiu, they were all solemn and respectful. Even Hu Zhongyuan didn't mock him at all. Instead, he was extremely envious. Priest Zongling's body was trembling, his face flushed red, and he wanted to kneel down and worship him on the spot. Only Zongyuan had a calm expression on his face. Perhaps in his heart, he didn't care about Zhongsho's identity or bloodline. Even if Zhongsho had nothing and was reduced to a commoner, this person would still fight to the death for him. In the next moment, Zhong laughed in self-mockery. Before your father went missing, he had already shown signs of awakening the 8 Tails bloodline. Zhongsho, your demonic body has even manifested starry patterns. Speaking of which, your bloodline seems to be even purer than ours, the so-called direct bloodline. The plan of the 8-Tail Shui clan was probably going to fail. Our Sky Fox Zhong family can straighten our backs from now on. After thinking for a while, Zhong took out a scroll made of golden silk from his sleeve and handed it over. These are the insights I have gained from studying the Sky Fox illusion technique over the years. It should be of some help to you. Zhongsho, as a return to Sun Spirit Master, in terms of seals, you are worse than those out-of-body realm Spirit Masters. How preposterous! Hearing those words, Zhongsho couldn't help but feel slightly ashamed. He scolded out in his heart. If it wasn't for him not having a proper Spirit Master legacy, why would things be like this? During these days, although he had been using the illusionary heart mirror to train his spiritual cultivation skills. However, in just a few short days, how much effect could he have? He hurriedly received the golden scroll and bowed solemnly. He knew that Zhong was passing his legacy to him. He finally had some respect for this old man, thinking to himself that his mentality was really utilitarian. If he could help him, then he was a good person. Those who dared to block his path were all scum and should be thrown into the trash. As for what kind of personality this Zhong had, he actually didn't know till now. He only knew that this person cared a lot about the rise and fall of the Zhong family and was really sincere. Just as he was about to thank him, Zhong scoffed coldly. You don't need to thank me. I just don't want to see you lose the face of our Sky Fox race. After saying that, he waved his sleeves, directly tossing the bunch of people aside and leaving far away. Zhongsho's brows furrowed slightly before he broke out into a laugh. He kept the golden scroll into his heaven and earth bag. Then he made a hand sign to hide his monster body in the illusionary technique. Zhongling frowned and didn't understand. Your Highness doesn't need to hide. If I knew that your Highness had awakened the 5-tail star tattoo body, not only would I be able to protect the hearts of our Sky Fox race, but the entire Gantia Mountain would also have the hearts of the people rise. Zhongsho was speechless. Speaking of which, Chu Shui and Ruo Shui had mentioned before that the star tattoo monster body represented the orthodox Sky Fox race and had huge authority. However, his mentality was still that of a pure human. He was still unable to accept this monster body. If there was no need, he wasn't willing to reveal it to others. Smiling and not replying, Zhongsho directly walked into the Taiging Hall. Pretty much instantly, he felt an energy strike over. Be it true chi or soul power, they were suppressed to grade 4 and below. Even the illusionary technique that Zhongsho had just cast shook and nearly dissipated. Luckily, he was prepared for this and had specially researched and strengthened this illusionary technique. Moments later, it stabilized. His spell grade was suppressed to grade 3. However, when the people here entered, their spiritual sense and 5 senses were also suppressed, so they didn't need to care much. The entire meeting hall was built according to the blueprints that Zhongsho took out. It was an arched building, a main hall, 10 side halls, and hundreds of rooms. It was more than 10 times larger than the Taiging Hall in Xian Mountain City. This was also because Gantian Mountain was rich, which was why they were able to build it so quickly. Within the main hall, the terrain was low on the inside and high on the outside. At the deepest part was a lecturing platform, and around it were rows of seats. With a rough count, there were actually 800 seats. At this moment, they were all gathered together. Gantian Mountain had close to 100 million people. Apart from some people who didn't have the conditions to participate in the election, there were a total of 500 people sitting in this huge meeting hall. Only 400 people were elected. The remaining 1/5 were appointed by Zhongsho himself. However, most of them were at a loss as they waited. Some were filled with anticipation, while some were bored. He only knew that he was chosen as a counselor to supervise the old people's bank, as well as the loans that were made. However, they didn't know why Zhongsho would be in such a hurry to gather them here. When Zhongsho walked in, everyone knelt down and bowed. Zhongsho didn't bother, walking to the throne behind the lecturing platform and sitting down. As for Hu Qianxiu, Chai Yuan, and the others, they actually had seats in the meeting hall. Zhongsho's decree had an additional rule that people with official jobs couldn't participate. Clan leaders like them only had titles, but no official positions. Naturally, they could also participate. The two of them and Ling Xian instinctively realized that Zhongsho's actions might have some secrets, which was why, although they had doubts, they proactively participated in this matter, and each of them got a meeting hall seat. When the hall regained silence, Zhongsho finally opened his mouth. I have summoned all of you here to discuss several administrative matters. Today, there is Prime Minister Rinbo, who is old and well-respected and knows about administrative matters. In the next 5 years, I want to appoint him as the Prime Minister of Gantian Mountain to manage all administrative matters. Who agrees and who opposes? Everyone in the hall instantly exchanged glances with one another, the loss in their eyes becoming thicker. They were all confused. No one knew what Zhongsho meant. Even Rinbo, who was at the side, was startled on the spot. Until a few minutes later, Zhongsho took a small hammer and heavily knocked on the small golden bell beside his seat. No one spoke. That means it passed. Oh, I forgot to say, in the future those who agree can raise their hands. Those who oppose can just slap the table. If half pass, they will be useless. Without waiting for the people to react, Zhongsho waved his sleeves and a bunch of servants walked out, handing out bee skins to the people in the hall. Before this, I had a decree to implement the Cabinet's 6-department system. This is what the Prime Minister suggested, the 6 departments and 9 ministers. You all can take a close look. The people in the hall still didn't understand the situation, thinking that since the Prime Minister recommended them, then there was most probably a reason for it. The Prime Minister was highly respected and definitely wouldn't be wrong. They all raised their hands. Some of them didn't even take a close look, just raising their hands up high. Like Hu Qianxiu and the others, they sharply noticed that the list didn't have anyone from the Ministry of Personnel or Ministry of War. The Ministry of Justice was also changed to the Ministry of Commerce. Before the waves in Rinbo's heart calmed down, a huge wave rose up once more. So that day in Rainbow City, Zhongsho wasn't unhappy with him, but he wanted to wait until today. However, what was Zhongsho's purpose in doing things like that? Another 10 minutes later, Zhongsho once again knocked on the small bell. 422 people raised their hands. That means it passes, Then we will discuss the budget for next year. Simply put, how should we spend the money earned next year? This time, without needing Zhongsho to signal, those servants had already passed beast skins to the people. Then, their eyes all lit up. Rimbua's so-called budget was a full 8 million grade 4 beast crystals. This was a good thing, making them envious. This time, without waiting for Zhongsho to ask, they all raised their hands, afraid that their ruler couldn't see it. Naturally, it passed without any suspense. Zhongsho smiled slightly, his eyes filled with bad intentions. Then the fourth proposal, loan desire legislation, within the cities directly under Mygantium Mountain, to remove all private soldiers, who agrees and who opposes. The many people in the hall all instinctively raised their hands. A moment later, Chai Yuan, Ling Xian, and the others came to their senses, smacking the table in front of them so hard that it shook the heavens. That Hu Qinxiu stood up, his eyes filled with a fierce glow, his eyes filled with a threatening intent as he swept the people in the hall. He looked like he would fight to the death with whoever dared to agree. When Zhongsho saw the situation, he scoffed coldly, "I will add another decree. All the people in the meeting hall will be protected by Mygantium Mountain. If anything happens, we won't rest until we die." Hu Qinxiu's lips twitched, and he could only sit down helplessly. Weren't there many people in the hall who didn't fear the strength of these large races? When Zhongsho said that, there were many people who raised their hands once more. Unfortunately, in the end, less than half of them passed. Even the elders of the Heavenly Fox clan did not approve of it. Zhongsho wasn't surprised, shaking his head regretfully. 234 people, less than half. This case is invalid. Another bind sound rang out, ringing the small bell. At this moment, a small half of the people in the hall came back to their senses, their eyes filled with deep thought. Zhongsho smiled, thinking that after doing this, although he couldn't let go, he could relax and spend a large part of his time to study the martial path. Chapter 326. The door to the conference hall was closed until midnight before it was opened again. Hundreds of people either filled with anticipation, excitement, or worry swarmed out. However, most of their faces were filled with exhaustion. Zhongsho tossed out tens of proposals, and most of them passed. However, as time passed, these people became more and more careful, thinking about it carefully before expressing their opinions. This was why they discussed for a full day. Weirdly speaking, just as Zhongsho stepped out of the meeting hall, the monster body moved. With a thought, the foxtail and fox ears were all retracted in the body. This caused Zhongsho to heave a sigh of relief. What he was most worried about was that the monster body wouldn't be able to be retracted. Ruler, a person suddenly appeared beside Zhongsho like a ghost. Zhongsho turned around and noticed that it was Runbua. At this moment, this treacherous official who caused him to lose millions of beast crystals was frowning. "I don't understand why Ruler built this meeting hall to restrict your own power. It was said that during the ancient times, the three emperors' prosperous era that the Confucians worshipped was like this. The chiefs and elders of the tribes would discuss matters together. The ancient ruler was only the leader of the tribes and ruled. He didn't have the power to kill or kill his subordinates. Prime Minister Rinbua came from the Confucians, and you should have heard of it. Zhongsho isn't talented, but it shouldn't be wrong to imitate the actions of the ancient saints." Seeing Rinbua's expression shake, his eyes filled with shock and respect, Zhongsho broke out into a laugh. Prime Minister really believed it? These righteous words were actually all fake. Zhongsho isn't interested in this, and doesn't have time to bother about such complicated administrative matters. I also don't want to spend all day here in Gantium Mountain. Rinbua was speechless, following which he laughed bitterly. "So that's the case. However, Ruler, won't you consider it? Ruler, you are really wise. If Gantium Mountain is ruled by you, within a few years, the country's strength will greatly increase. At that time, it wouldn't be difficult to unify the Cloud Continent." Zhongsho, on the other hand, felt a little guilty. He only knew a little about politics, and there were a lot of things that he did not understand. He only had a few tricks up his sleeves, and they were almost used up now. If he really wanted to rule, then this Gantian mountain would be messed up. However, he wasn't willing to apologize, maintaining the demeanor of a wise ruler, directly shaking his head. No matter how strong this Gantian mountain is, can it let me roam freely in the world? Let me hear the laws of heaven and earth. Let me prove the pinnacle of the martial path. What if I want to do something new and unusual again? What do you plan to do, Prime Minister? One sentence stunned Rimbaud. Zhongsho said proudly. Anyways, I'll leave the matters of Gantian Mountain to Prime Minister. Anyways, I can't totally let go. Hearing those few words, Rimbaud started to worry. With Zhongsho's personality, he might do things like banning Shirley Ling Xiangding or doing things like this meeting hall. At that time, he would have a headache. Thinking about that, Rimbaud wished that Zhongsho would behave in the future. It would be best if he didn't care about anything and scram. What His Highness was best, I was twisting the truth. His actions were extravagant, but he could still talk about principles, forcefully making himself think for Gantian Mountain. Although he was smart, his actions were a little too preposterous. If this happened a few more times, his heart wouldn't be able to take it. His prime minister position, in Zhongsho's words, only had 5 years. At that time, if he wanted to take over, he would need Zhongsho to nominate him and then get half of the people in the meeting hall to agree. However, within these 5 years, he wouldn't be restricted by the ruler and could do whatever he wanted in Gantian Mountain. He could prove what he had learned for tens of years. The ruler is the leader of his subjects. No matter how the ruler messes up, if we can't persuade him, we can only listen to him. Why does the ruler have to do that? He pretended to try to persuade him to stay. Rimbaud's tone changed. That Ministry of War is the foundation of the ruler's power, and you won't easily give it to others. However, although the Ministry of Personnel and Ministry of Punishment have power, they aren't the foundations. Ruler, please return it to the cabinet. If not, it will be inconvenient. Zhongsho's expression instantly became weird. This Rimbaud was really a cunning official. He actually got used to the role so quickly and wanted to take the power from his bag. How shameless! After arguing for a while, Zhongsho resisted Rimbaud's entanglement, only giving him some power in the Ministry of Personnel before sending him away. After he came down from Jing'an Peak, Zhongsho still didn't return to his palace. He directly put on a disguise and left Gantian Mountain with a light carriage. He didn't bring the other guards, only Zhong Yuan, Hu Zhongyin, and a few others to protect his carriage out of Gantian Mountain. Hu Zhongyuan also didn't know where Zhongsho was going to go. Along the way, he scolded out in his heart. He said that he was in disguise, but Zhongsho's extravagant style still didn't change. A brand new cloud-crossing carriage. In the small space of 100 feet or so, there were a dozen or so spiritual formations inlaid in it. The decorations of the carriage outside were also extremely beautiful. The few attendants were all martial ancestor experts, and they were all riding rank 4 mounts. The armor on their bodies was also extremely exquisite. Who could be fooled by such a showy display of extravagance? Those spies probably knew right away when they left the city. He was just deceiving himself. First, they headed south to a place 1,200 miles away from Gantian Mountain. Not long ago, this place was a subordinate city of Gantian Mountain. However, today it had turned into ruins. Hu Zhongyuan was slightly delighted. He had personally destroyed this place. The city lord of this place was really unlucky to follow that short-lived Yu Guanyun during the Cloud Ocean hunt. Naturally, Zhongsho wanted to kill him to warn the monkeys. As it was winter, the plains on both sides were covered in frost and snow. There was no one around. However, on that abandoned city, there were numerous people working hard. Looking out, they were all tall and straight, with silver hair. Zhongsho got off the carriage and looked around. Not long later, his brows furrowed as he looked in one direction, only to see a beautiful little girl not making a sound. She was pulling a stone the size of 2 people, thousands of kilograms, up the city wall. Zhongsho's brows furrowed, walking over in large steps and carrying the girl up. In the next instant, his eyes were filled with rage. This little brat's body was covered in green and purple patches, with tens of crisscrossing whip marks. Rulin. Chu Shui was also shocked. Her heart pained as she snatched Rulin over and hugged her. She seemed to have thought about something, taking out a bottle of medicine from her bag. She applied it on Rulin. Even Ruoshui's brows furrowed, like she was a little annoyed. After a short while, dozens of majestic figures arrived one after another. The one at the front was Fatian. Zhongshu's brows furrowed. When that Fatian bowed in front of him, he laughed. Is race leader Fatian satisfied with this place? Extremely satisfied, and I'm really grateful. Fatian bowed gratefully, his expression sincere. The land here is fertile, much better than below the cloud ocean. I want to thank the ruler for allowing my snow lion race to see the light of day and have a place in Donglin Cloud Continent. Zhongshu nodded slightly, hearing that this snow lion race leader wanted to join him. Actually, within Gantian Mountain territory, this person had no choice. Then in race leader Shi's eyes, am I, Zhongshu, a trustworthy person? Seeing him nod his head in shock, Zhongshu laughed coldly. Then why did race leader break your promise to me? I passed Rulin to you all because you are her close family, and it isn't good to take her away from you. I asked you to treat her well, and this is how you treat her? Suddenly, he lifted his hand and tore apart the clothes on the back of Rulin's back. Immediately, a ghastly whip mark appeared. Fatian was originally at a loss, but when he heard the latter half, his face was like a pig liver, not knowing what to do. In his eyes, Zhongshu's interest in his daughter was just because he liked her. Handing her back meant that he wasn't interested in her anymore. He didn't expect that Zhongshu would place so much importance on this little girl. All of a sudden, he didn't know how to reply. On the contrary, behind Fatian, a tall silver-haired teen around 20 years old said furiously, "The rules of my snow lion race are just like that. She is just a bastard, unable to awaken her bloodline. Useless people should listen to orders. Look at the other people of my race. Aren't they the same? She was whipped so many times because she was so cheap, just 25,000 kilograms of greenstone a day." When Fatian heard that, he knew that things weren't good. Zhongshu's eyes opened wide, following which he laughed instead of being angry. "Who are you to be worthy of speaking to me? Why is it that in my eyes, the most cheap person here is you?" Before his words landed, Zhong Yuan's body suddenly flashed, lightning flashing in midair as he appeared in front of the teen, kicking out expressionlessly. A moment later, there was a heavy pung as the person was kicked hundreds of feet away. His body smashed into the wall in the distance, forming a deep hole. Fatian was both shocked and furious. His heart pained even more. This teen was his fourth son, and he usually loved and cared for him a lot. At this moment, he had lost consciousness, totally unconscious. Blood seeped from the corner of his lips, who knew how bad his injuries were. Zhongshu was still angry, laughing coldly. 25,000 kilograms of green stone? Very good, this little girl's age. She's not even 10 years old, right? Her cultivation hasn't even reached the 4th meridian of the bodily chakra realm. How about this? In 3 days, send this person to Gantian Mountain. I won't treat him badly. Just let him carry 50,000 kilograms of green stone a day, half a mile. Apart from that, he will receive 60 whips. How you all treated Rulin, I will treat him the same." Fatian was slightly shocked. His fourth son had just reached the 9th meridian of the bodily chakra realm and only had 10,000 kilograms of strength. His rage couldn't be suppressed. "Ruler, my fourth son just doesn't know the rules," and spoke rudely. "Why do you have to do that? Rulin is my daughter. How to treat her and how to raise her is the internal matter of my snow lion race. I know the rules of the Cloud Continent. The ruler doesn't have the power to interfere in the private matters of the subordinate races." Chapter 327. Subordinate? Who said you're my subordinate? Zhongshu shook his head, his eyes devoid of warmth. If I, Zhongshu, don't nod my head, Your race will still be my personal slaves. Sure, Fatian was startled. In the next moment, he heard Zhongsho scoff. Even if you are my subordinate, if I want to interfere, what can you do? The gaze that swept across the room was extremely cold and filled with killing intent. It caused Shurfacian's breathing to stop. He recalled that the life and death of their race was still in the hands of Zhongsho. As long as he gave an order, the millions of troops around could press down and wipe them all out. It was said that the original owner of this place had betrayal in his heart, and his entire race was wiped out by this demon Fox King. He couldn't help but clench his fists tightly. Just as he was about to speak, a person beside him suddenly opened his mouth. "Ruler, why are you so angry? This Shurulin is only my father. Born from a concubine, her bloodline isn't pure and can't be compared to the direct bloodline of my Shur family. If Ruler likes her, then just take her away. Why do you have to make things difficult for my fourth brother?" Shur Fatian didn't need to look and knew that this was his second son, Shur Dingyuan. He was the most stable and intelligent, entering the martial ancestor realm at 30 years old. Similar to his eldest son, he was recognized as the next race leader candidate. Usually, he relied heavily on him. When he heard those words, he relaxed. Those words were polite and proper, exactly what he was thinking about. Zhongsho broke out into a laugh. A violent energy rose up in his chest. The way this person said it made it seem like Zhongsho was being unreasonable. His expression didn't change as Zhongsho walked 10 feet in front of this person and looked up and down. He had to praise the height of this snow lion race person. This person's body wasn't any weaker than Hu Zhongyuan. To him, who was still small and thin, he felt a little pressure. "I know you. You are Shurulin's second brother. You are called Shur Dingyuan? When did I ever tell you that I was trying to reason with you?" Shur Dingyuan closed his eyes, a cold smile appearing on his face. Ruler should know that 10 steps of land can cause blood to splash 3 feet. Within 10 steps, blood splattered 3 feet. For some reason, the anger in Zhongsho's chest suddenly disappeared by half. He only felt a wave of helplessness. Towards these people who still didn't understand the situation, there was no way to reason with them. He could not help but feel a slight headache. Could it be that he had to use his fist to teach these fellows a lesson? He had to consider Shurulin's feelings, but he couldn't kill her. It was really troublesome. Even Hu Zhongyuan and the others snickered when they saw Zhongsho's predicament. In the past, no matter what Zhongsho did, he was able to do it easily. It could be easily dealt with. Such a situation was rare. That's right. Shur Dingyuan didn't sense anything at all. He didn't see the dangerous aura in Samaran's body as he laughed coldly. "Although Ruler has millions of troops, you are in the land of my snow lion race. Ruler can order us around, but you can insult my snow lion race. If not, even if my race is wiped out, my Shur family will fight to the death. Shur Dingyuan isn't talented, but within 10 steps, I can take Ruler's life." Those words couldn't continue. All of a sudden, Shur Dingyuan felt a vast and boundless soul power rush straight into his mind. He also felt a vast and supreme aura suppress him. Pretty much in an instant, it destroyed the energy around his body. Although it wasn't vast and huge, it was an extremely high-level martial path intent. It controlled huge amounts of spiritual energy and true energy, like it could store numerous things within. In front of him, this Zhongsho who was weak and easy to bully. Suddenly, it was like he was an unshakable giant thing that he could only look up at. That intent and soul power seemed like it wanted to crush his mind and his will. It was pretty much a merciless attack. In just a moment, it caused the true chi in his body to show signs of collapsing. His body and limbs were giving out cracking sounds. Shurfatian also noticed that something wasn't right. He suddenly stepped forward, crossing tens of feet and grabbing towards Zhongsho's shoulder. "Ruler, please stop. Show mercy. Dingyuan didn't mean to offend you." Before that hand was 3 inches away from Zhongsho's shoulder, Zhongsho suddenly struck out. He didn't show any mercy, a palm knife slashing diagonally. Little Gold's body instantly turned into a glove that covered his arm. The lightning-winged young snake exploded out a ball of lightning, wrapping around his arm and body. Scram! There was a loud paw sound, and this part of the city wall that wasn't completed shook slightly. Everyone who was paying attention was startled, only to see that Zhongsho, who should have retreated, was still standing on the spot. On the contrary, Shi Feishan's body was forced back tens of steps, his face turning green. Between the two of them, there was no wind spreading, only threads of lightning flashing. Beneath Shi Feishan's feet was a deep hole, with each step several feet deep. Coincidentally, at this moment, Shi Dingyuan couldn't take it anymore, his body finally kneeling down under the huge pressure. With a pa-cha sound, the stone shattered, causing the green stone under his body to nearly break into pieces. His eyes were filled with shock and fear, like he didn't expect that he would fall to such a state. That Shi Fatian was also at a loss. He originally thought that Zhongsho didn't know martial arts. The reason why he had high hopes for Shi Rulin was because she also had a weak body and found it hard to cultivate. They were in the same boat. Only now did he know that such a thought was wrong. This Gantian mountain monster king who held them captive actually casually struck out and caused him to suffer heavy injuries. In that case, just how strong was this person? Looking at his appearance, he seemed to be only 14. If it wasn't for him purposely finding people to ask about him, he would probably have died. He nearly started to suspect the true age of this Zhongsho. No wonder Zhong Yuan and the others who followed him didn't have any intentions of helping. Such a person, even if he used the strength of his entire race, he might not be able to keep him. A heart-piercing chill suddenly spread all over his body, pretty much suppressing the shock in his heart. Shi Fatian opened his mouth once more. This time his expression was even more respectful. "Ruler, please let my son go. My snow lion race is born under the cloud ocean and doesn't know the rules." Dingyuan also doesn't know the rules. He was too eager to protect his younger brother and made an unintentional mistake. If Ruler can be merciful, I will be extremely grateful in the future. If an unintentional mistake is already like this, what would happen if he offended you? Wouldn't he flip the heavens? As for the gratitude of your race leader, how much is it worth? Zhongsho scoffed coldly, causing Shi Fatian to hold his breath once more. Following which he looked back at Shi Rulin. "Rulin, how about I kill your second brother?" The many snow lion race people here were all shocked. Shi Rulin was also anxious, like a rattle drum, as she shook her head furiously. Zhongsho had expected this, smiling slightly. "I can let your brother go, but 10 years later you need to defeat all your brothers and sisters. Rulin, can you do that?" Shi Rulin first shook her head. Zhongsho didn't hesitate to pull out his sword from the sheath. Like he was about to slash down, he hurriedly nodded his head. Only then was Zhongsho satisfied, but he still slashed out with his sword, slicing open Shi Dingyuan's mouth. Along with fresh blood spurting out, a broken tongue fell to the ground. Shi Feishan's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. At this moment, he didn't dare to flare up at Zhongsho. Instead, he stared furiously at Rulin, wanting to skin her alive. If it wasn't for this jinx, his two sons wouldn't have fallen to such a state. One whose life or death was unknown, the other whose tongue was sliced off. It was all because of this bastard. Shi Rulin was startled. When she saw Shi Feishan's demon-like expression, her eyes dimmed, filled with sadness. She couldn't help but shrink into Chu Shui's embrace, seeking the warmth of Chu Shui's embrace. "My Gantia mountain rules are that those who go against their superiors will die. Seeing that you spoke rudely, I will only punish you. Are you willing?" Zhongsho looked at Shi Dingyuan, only to see that his face was covered in blood, his eyes filled with venom. As for Shi Fatian, his expression was twisted. He couldn't help but laugh. It seemed like the two of them wouldn't be willing. Looking around, only to see that Shi Feishan's few sons and daughters were all silent out of fear. As for Shi Fatian, he kept silent and didn't speak anymore. He couldn't help but feel bored and bored. With his personality, he really wanted to slay all these so-called Snow Lion direct bloodline disciples with one sword, so that they wouldn't be an eyesore. However, due to Shi Rulin, he couldn't attack. These people saw Sherulin as a bastard bloodline. Their views were deeply rooted, and they hated her. Could it be that he could change the minds of these people with his martial arts? Sighing slightly, Zhongsho helplessly reached out and hugged Sherulin into his embrace. You all look down on Rulin and see her as a bastard. Do you know that in my eyes, she alone is 100 times more noble than all of you? In terms of bloodline, this brat is a true, pure-blooded snow lion, and is someone your ancestors took care of. You are just some bastard bloodlines, and you dare to see her as a bastard? What a joke. Zhongsho had no idea what the bloodline legacy of the monster race was like. However, in the future, this Sherulin was simply too famous, close to a legend. Countless sects and forces have been defeated by her. Her name shook the cloud world, and the secrets of her bloodline naturally spread all over. Sherfation's brows furrowed, obviously not believing it. This bastard wasn't even half as tall as a snow lion race girl of the same age. Her body was thin and weak, so how could she be a pure blood of their snow lion race? Even her hair color wasn't the same silver white as their race. There was a period of time where he even suspected that this girl wasn't his daughter. Zhongsho shook his head once more. Suddenly, he pointed at the center of Sherulin's brows. A ball of spiritual energy reached in, but in that instance, it was bounced out by an external force, following which numerous silver patterns appeared at the center of Sherulin's brows. First, it stretched out bit by bit like a snowflake, following which numerous threads spread all over Sherulin's body. Wherever the snowy threads passed, the wounds on his body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chapter 328. Only after Sherulin's injuries were completely healed did the silver-white thread slowly fade away, as if it had exhausted its strength. On the city wall, even Zhongsho himself was shocked. Previously, when he used the illusionary heart mirror to test Sherulin, he had already sensed that there seemed to be something hidden within this little girl's soul sea. Just now, when he sent his spiritual energy in, he was trying to trigger it. However, he didn't expect that he would accidentally draw out such a strong thing. His heart was ice cold. He knew that he was too optimistic about Sherulin's situation these days. She had such strong recovery ability, but her body was still covered in wounds. One could see what kind of torture this brat had gone through during the 20-odd days that he wasn't here. If it was a normal person, they would have died long ago. He was really dumb. He should have thought that Sherulin's race didn't like her. He was actually so dumb. He threw this brat back to the snow lion race and didn't care about her at all. He thought that he could take care of the emotions of her family. However, it was totally meaningless. Why would Sherulin's so-called blood relatives treat her like that? This is the maniac lion snow seal. An old voice suddenly rang out on the city wall. It caused everyone to come to their senses. Zhongsho's brows furrowed as he looked towards where the voice came from. Two old men could be seen trembling as they walked towards them. One of them looked similar to Sherfatian. Even if he was old, he wasn't any weaker than Sherfatian. His aura was majestic and his strength was indiscernible. His position seemed to be really noble. The other person was dressed like a priest and was the one who spoke. His eyes shone brightly as he looked at Sherulin with a little bit of excitement. Maniac Lion Snow Seal. Zhongsho was slightly startled. Then, he didn't pay much attention to it. He guessed that this snow seal was something similar to his star tattoos. Expressionlessly sweeping the two old men, Zhongsho retracted his gaze. He smiled. Rulin, does it still hurt? Do you hate these fellows? Why don't I help you kill them all? The two old men held their breaths. They looked at the teen in fear. They only felt that although this kid's tone was really calm, it was really serious. It was like as long as Sherulin said a word, this Zhongsho would wipe out their entire snow lion race. Sherulin decisively shook her head. Kill? Do you want me to kill them like those blood raccoons in the mountains? Shue doesn't want to kill them. Shue is in pain, but it's okay. Mother used to say that Shue was too weak. As long as Shue becomes stronger, father and brother will treat Shue well. Also, big brother, what does hate mean? Are you angry by? In the end, He opened his mouth to speak, yet his tone was choppy and incoherent. It was like it was really difficult for her to say those words. Zhongsho could tell that Shirulin was like that because she rarely spoke to others. His gaze became colder and colder, like a knife slicing towards the people here. Then, he couldn't help but pout. Although he expected it, he was still unwilling. He thought to himself, what kind of person was this brat's mother? That was a little too weird. With such a mindset, it was no wonder that this little girl would never leave these bastards. Even when her military power was taken away, she didn't betray them and was buried with the snow lion race. Then what about your mother? Mother? Brother's talking about my mother? She isn't here anymore. Just like those blood raccoons, they don't know how to speak anymore and won't accompany me anymore. Looking at her hands, Shirulin's expression became dimmer and dimmer. Rulin counts every day. Today is the 47th count. If I continue any longer, I won't be able to count anymore. Chu Shui and Irin were already tearing up when they heard that. They knew that Shirulin was saying that her mother had already died for 470 days. Zhongsho suddenly understood what Shirulin was thinking. Maybe this brat didn't really like these people. She just craved kinship, which was why she was like that. A little fellow who was bullied every day and ignored by no one, even if someone gave her a little bit of warmth. Shirulin would probably hug him tightly like a drowning person, not willing to let go until she was in total despair. For some reason, Zhongsho only felt a throbbing pain in his chest. The vicious thoughts that had just been calmed down once again surged up. On the surface, he was smiling as he caressed Shirulin's head. Rulin, do you really want a father and brother? How about this? They hate you and don't want you, but I do. In the future, I will be your brother's family, okay? Brother likes you a lot. Shirulin's eyes instantly lit up. She turned her head in surprise and looked at Zhongsho. However, she was also a little afraid, like she didn't dare to believe that the scenes in front of her were real. In this world, there was really someone who liked her. Zhongsho didn't say anything, directly tearing off the expensive fur coat that Zhongyuan was wearing and covering Shirulin's thin body. Then his eyes coldly swept towards Fatian. Killing intent flashed before he suppressed it. I will take this little fellow away today. In the future, she will be my Zhongsho's sworn sister. 10 years later, she will return and take over the position of race leader of the Snow Lion race. Fatian's brows furrowed slightly. Only the direct descendant of the Shur family can take over the position of race leader. Before he could finish his sentence, a voice rang out. A red glow appeared in Samuraim's eyes once more. His entire body suddenly disappeared. A lightning glow exploded and he was 100 feet away, right in front of Fatian. The latter's reaction was really swift, not showing any fear, because he was forced to retreat just now. After a low scoff, the muscles on his body expanded. His silver hair stood up like that of a porcupine. His two hands were like iron pincers, grabbing towards Zhongsho's hands. In the end, he didn't dare to offend the Gantian Mountain Monster King. However, this strike was confident that it could temporarily restrict Zhongsho. Close to 4 million kilograms of strength, also borrowing the strength of the hundreds of thousands of Snow Lion race people gathered here. He was pretty much climbing up to the Ascended Realm. Just the wind that he brought caused the green stones around to be unable to take it, breaking apart inch by inch. Lion splitting heavenly dragon. This pair of hands, even if it was a grade 6 flood dragon in front of him, it could be smashed into pieces. In that instance, a lightning snake wrapped around Zhongsho's arm. Then, tens of thousands of purple lightning gathered between his fingers and palms. The speed of the fist instantly increased by several times, passing through between his palms without a hair's breadth. Maniac lightning fist intent. At that moment, Fatian was filled with fear. This Zhongsho had actually grasped the intent of the martial path. However, he didn't have time to think about it, and was unable to react. He only felt his waist being heavily struck. It was like a giant hammer carrying tens of millions of kilograms of strength smashed into his chest. The purple lightning injected into his body and exploded all about, crazily spreading. It caused his four limbs and his thoughts to freeze up. His entire body was tossed into the air. His waist was like it was broken as he continuously rolled in the air. Just as he was about to land on the ground, Zhongsho's body swiftly struck over. He stomped down, heavily stomping Fake's head down. A loud explosion, numerous dust, and smoke rolled about on the city walls. All of the bluestone slabs crumbled. That old man who looked similar to Fatian was already a little anxious. At this moment, when he saw the situation, he couldn't take it anymore. His body pounced forwards toward the area where the dust and smoke was thick. The speed of his body flashing was no slower than Zhongsho's from before. Zhong Yuan's eyes squinted, the spear in his hand lightly wrapped around. However, a moment later, it calmed down once more. That was because his spiritual sense felt that Zhongsho had already pulled out his sword where the dust and smoke was the thickest. When the sword was swung, a huge purple lightning snake suddenly appeared. It was like a huge dragon dancing in the air. Maniac lightning slash. When a lightning snake completely charged down and exploded, only then did the sharp sword chi within it reveal the tip of the iceberg. The silver-haired old man's eyes constricted, following which he gave out a giant roar that could shake mountains and rivers. His palms also grabbed out. Each claw image seemed to have a snow-white giant lion appearing behind it. It actually went head-on against Zhongsho's maniac lightning sword energy. It wasn't at a disadvantage at all. In midair, one could hear a series of explosions as the dust and smoke became more and more unrestrained. The wind danced, the snow lion race, people who were slightly weaker were all blown far away. Zhongsho was slightly shocked. This person's strength was probably only below that of Yu Guanyin. It was the first time he saw someone who could block so many of his swords. Following which he scoffed coldly. If he didn't vent it today, it would be tough for him to quell the rage in his chest. Zhongsho's sword suddenly changed. It was still lightning dancing, but the core within suddenly changed. Water and fire intersected, twisting and spinning. Numerous lightning glows wrapped around the outside. As expected, the silver-haired old man's true chi was suffocating and weak. Unable to react in time, his entire shoulder was drilled in by the fire and water spiral true chi, and then a bloody hole was blown open. His complexion instantly turned incomparably pale. A pair of iron palms that were as tough as spiritual weapons were close to collapsing. A moment later, there was another muffled explosion in the air. The silver-haired old man's body retreated explosively. He was in a bad state. The clothes on his body were torn, and there were numerous wounds. His pair of muscular hands were trembling slightly. Although he wasn't heavily injured, his eyes that looked deep into the dust and smoke were filled with shock and fear. His body was fixed on the spot, not moving at all. That last sword had obviously changed sword intent, a type that he had never seen before, different from the legendary Ice Flame Sword intent, a brand new martial path intent. He also had a feeling that this teen didn't go all out just now. The wind from his sword and palm clashing was still wreaking havoc. In a moment, the dust and smoke were blown away. It was totally blown away. Zhongsho was startled once more, his estimation of the old man's strength once more increased by a level. He wasn't just a little weaker than Yu Guanyin, but he wasn't weaker than him. Afterwards, he didn't pay much attention. If it was before he advanced to the Return to Sun realm or outside of Gantia Mountain, this person might be able to threaten him, but in this place, this person was at most just a little trouble. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.